Chapter 39. At this moment, Qiao Yin's face was pale with fright. Someone had actually dared to barge into the young master's courtyard without permission. What were they trying to do? Were they trying to threaten the young master? At this moment, Qiao Yin really wanted to shout. She really wanted to berate Tiger's mane and the rest for what they were doing. They usually boasted so much about how powerful they were. Why was there no trace of them now? Alright, it's fine. Everything is under the control of this young master. Yang Chendong saw that Qiao Yin was trembling. She was clearly frightened. For a moment he was a little angry. After comforting Qiao Yin, he led her out of the study. After confirming that there were only 3 people, Yang Chendong's expression turned cold. Entering the courtyard without the owner's permission. How are you any different from bandits? If you can't give this young master an explanation, then don't leave today. As soon as he finished speaking, a man walked out from the flowering trees to the side. This person was tall and sturdy, with broad shoulders and a round waist. He also had a fierce gaze. It was the servant Beta Persei. His appearance could serve as a deterrent, and also ensure that if anyone wanted to harm the young master, they would have to go through him first. In the dark, Tiger's mane was leading several other servants or personal guards to aim their small crossbows. Next, the young master only needed to say one word, and these 3 people, including the housekeeper in the backyard, would be dead on the spot. The young family didn't need such traitorous ingrates. The questioning voice was very clear in the quiet courtyard. However, the 3 people who were questioned didn't panic at all. Instead, it was the brother in charge of scouting who chuckled. What's wrong? We've barged in. What can you do about it? Very good. Yang Chendong smiled like a spring breeze, then closed his folding fan. Beta Persei, teach him a lesson. Whoosh. As his voice fell, a fist the size of a clay bowl arrived in front of the embroidered uniform guard. Its speed was so fast that it actually caused a burst of explosive sounds to ring out in the wind. Everything happened too quickly. The embroidered uniform guard didn't have time to prepare. When he saw the fist coming, he instinctively retreated. At the same time, his body leaned backwards like a metal bridge, trying to avoid the fierce punch. The reaction of the embroidered uniform guards could not be said to be slow. Even their movements of retreating were very standard. This was enough to deal with an ordinary attack. But today he met Beta Persei, who was the best fighter among the bodyguards other than Tiger's mane. Even when he fought Lung Song one-on-one, he did not back down. At the same time that the embroidered uniform guard retreated, the long fist had already been retracted. All of this was just a feint to force the embroidered uniform guard to do this. Then a long leg swept over. In the next breath, it hit the waist of the embroidered uniform guard. Unable to dodge, he was kicked directly. The strength of the kick was so great that the embroidered uniform guard was sent flying. When he landed on the ground, he was already several feet away. You're courting death. Seeing that his companion was attacked and injured, another embroidered uniform guard shouted. Another embroidered uniform guard roared and leaped over. The distance of 7 or 8 steps was covered in 3 strides. Then his body soared into the air. His right arm stretched forward, and a long fist smashed towards Beta Persei's temple. This punch was extremely fast and ferocious. It was clear that this punch was meant to kill second young Master Yang. Under this punch, 2 voices of no rang out. The ones who spoke were the middle-aged leader of the embroidered uniform guard and the maid Qiao Yin. However, without waiting for the voices to fade, Beta Persei had already turned around and punched. His body's flexibility seemed to have exceeded the limits of a human. After that big and fierce punch smashed over, the power of the punch met with the outstretched hand. Under the collision of the 2 fists, a snapping sound rang out. That was the embroidered uniform guard's arm being dislocated by the huge force. This was because Yang Chendong had previously said that they should not casually injure people before figuring out the purpose of these people. Otherwise, with this punch, the embroidered uniform guard's entire right arm would be crippled. With his arm dislocated, pain spread throughout his body. The embroidered uniform guard who wanted to sneak attack also cried out in pain as he fell to the ground and began to roll. The pain caused him to instantly break out in cold sweat, drenching his head. This kind of pain was unbearable even for a man of steel. Beta Persei did not even look at the two embroidered uniform guards who fell to the ground. Instead, his gaze fell on the leader. Although he did not say anything, his meaning was very clear. He wanted to take care of him as well. Wait. Seeing that his two subordinates who were quite skilled were unable to withstand a single blow, the middle-aged man knew that he had encountered a problem today. He immediately stretched out his hand and threw an ivory waist token with words on it across the air. Beta Persei reached out and caught it. After glancing at it, he raised his head and looked seriously at the middle-aged man in front of him. He then took a few steps back and came in front of Yang Chendong, respectfully handing over the ivory waist token. Embroidered uniform guard town supervisor Hu Zhongning? Looking at the words engraved on the waist token, Yang Chendong softly read it. But then he raised his head and looked at Hu Zhongning with a puzzled expression. Confusion was written all over his face. That. We were just passing by while carrying out a mission. We have long heard of the sixth young master's reputation and wanted to meet him. But because of the issue of identity, we did not want everyone to know about it, so there was a misunderstanding. Hu Zhongning said with a slightly red face. He did not expect it. But because his daughter was too clingy, he had no choice but to agree to meet the sixth young master. What did he look like? What kind of character was he? This could be considered as an old father-in-law coming to see his son-in-law in advance. Who would have thought that the result would be like this? His two subordinates were beaten to the ground. If he did not reveal his identity in time, he was afraid that the next one to be injured would be him. If that was really the case, then he would really lose all his face here. Since the other party had revealed their identity and expressed their goodwill, Yang Chendong naturally would not use any violent means. At least now was not the time to fall out with the embroidered uniform guard. Other things aside, his brothers and sisters were all in the capital. If he really dared to do this, then the safety of his family would not be guaranteed. When that time came, no matter how much he did, he would not be able to make up for the lack of family affection. So it's the embroidered uniform guard. Chendong has been rude. Beta Persei, hurry up and fix his arm. Pretending not to know anything, Yang Chendong immediately said in a reprimanding tone. Yes, young master. Beta Persei knew that this was an act, but he still pretended to be terrified and quickly agreed. Then he took a few steps forward and gently helped the dislocated arm of the embroidered uniform guard to a sitting position. Then he saw the arm move and shake, and it was already as good as new. After moving for a while, it would be more or less recovered. As for the other person, he only suffered a kick. Beta Persei had already held back. It was extremely painful at the time, but it would slowly recover after a while. Seeing that the two of them were fine, Yang Chendong revealed a blooming smile. Lord Hu, please. Sorry to disturb you. Faced with the sixth young master's invitation, Hu Zhongning originally wanted to refuse. He really did not have the face to continue staying here. But since he had already promised his daughter, he had to give an explanation. Although she had seen Yang Chendong, and he was indeed handsome and dashing, just this point alone was not very convincing. He had seen and heard many stories about those who pretended to be dignified, but were actually full of thieves and prostitutes. Thinking that through a conversation he could understand the other party in depth and also be responsible for his daughter, Hu Zhongning finally put his face aside for the time being. After agreeing, he strode into the study. Xiaoyin, serve the tea. Yang Chendong smiled and turned to the side, inviting Hu Zhongning to enter first. After all, in terms of position, Hu Zhongning was a fourth rank, and in terms of age, he was much older than himself. He could even be called an uncle, so it was only right for him to be modest. Beta Persei did not stop Hu Zhongning this time, but turned to the side to let him pass. But then he stood at the door of the study. From the looks of it, if anyone wanted to harm the sixth young master, he would probably go berserk again. A trace of doubt flashed through his heart. Yang Chendong was only a ninth-rank small official. Why would there be such an expert protecting him? Hu Zhongning could not figure it out. When he sat in the small reception room connected to the study, he was still frowning. Hee, Lord Hu, my servant has offended you. It was because a thief had broken into the backyard at night. Later on, I had no choice but to ask someone to find such a guard for my safety. Yang Chendong had a look of helplessness. He knew that if this matter could not be explained properly, it would easily become a weakness for others to use against him. So that's how it is. After hearing the explanation, Hu Zongning's expression immediately became much better. When he thought about how many people would know about Yang Chendong after Yang Bao became famous, it was normal for some people to harbor evil intentions. Naturally, it was reasonable for him to have such a strong guard. Things had a reasonable explanation. Next, when Hu Zhongning and Yang Chendong talked, it was a lot more natural. Governor Yang, this official is actually here to mourn old Master Yang and your mother. My father is the current Minister of Rights. Because he could not casually mention his father's honorific title, Hu Zongning used his official position to speak. Oh, so it's Minister Hu's family. Chendong has been disrespectful. Hu Zhao's name immediately jumped into his mind. Yang Chendong immediately stood up and cupped his fists in salute. Seeing that Yang Chendong was not narrow-minded because of the unpleasantness just now, and was instead so polite and respectful, Hu Zhongning felt much better. Hu Zhongning felt much better and smiled apologetically. Magistrate Yang, there's no need to be like this. I was a little rash in my actions before. It's fine, it's fine. It's all a misunderstanding. Yang Chendong did not know the relationship between his father and Hu Xiao, but since Hu Xiao was here, he had to be polite first. As for the future, he would leave it to the Security Bureau to investigate. Chapter 40. Yang Chendong had no choice but to take Hu Zhongning to the praying hall since he had stated the purpose of his visit. There were temporary memorial tablets for his father and mother there for outsiders to mourn. Following Yang Chendong to the praying hall, Hu Zhongning lit the incense. Seeing that the place was unusually clean, and the room was filled with the fragrance of incense, and the incense ashes were piled high in the incense burner, Hu Zhongning knew that it must have been caused by the frequent burning of incense. He couldn't help but have a better impression of Yang Chendong. A filial person couldn't be a bad person deep down. In addition, Yang Chendong treated the guests politely and spoke in a steady manner, which was much better than other young people of his age. It was a sign of his composure. Though Hu Zhongning had already stated his identity, he didn't show any intention of flattering him. It was evident that this person was a man of integrity and pride. If he could be tempered, he might become a pillar of the state in the future. If Hu Zhongning could have such a man as his son-in-law, it would be a good marriage. Walking out of the praying hall, Hu Zhongning intended to have a good chat with Yang Chendong to observe him and understand him better, as per his previous request. However, due to the embarrassing incident earlier, he refused even though Yang Chendong asked him to stay for dinner. They didn't leave through the back door, but through the side door. As soon as Hu Zhongning and the other two arrived on the street, the subordinate who had been knocked to the ground first said, "Why does the sixth young master have such a highly skilled swordsman by his side? I think we should investigate him thoroughly." That's right. This kind of expert is a top-notch existence even in the embroidered uniform guards and the Eastern faction. If we don't investigate this kind of person thoroughly, it's really unsettling. Another subordinate also said with a face full of indignation. It was understandable that he was angry. He had taken the initiative to launch a sneak attack, but he was knocked to the ground with one move. It was truly embarrassing. Enough. Hu Zhongning didn't tell his subordinates that his daughter had asked him to visit Yang Chendong, so they didn't know why he had come. It would be strange if he didn't get angry when he heard that they wanted to investigate his future son-in-law. If you can't beat him, then go back and practice hard. What's the use of complaining here? Also, what happened today was too embarrassing. Don't tell anyone about it. As for why there's such an expert here, it's because Yang Chendong is too conspicuous and he's afraid of being targeted. Hu Zhongning took the initiative to find an excuse and reason for the sixth young master. Being targeted? I don't think that's the case, the two subordinates said stubbornly. Originally, the embroidered uniform guards were in existence that people looked up to no matter where they went. However, after today's setback, they couldn't be blamed for having such thoughts. That's enough, Hu Zhongning said angrily. He might be his future son-in-law, but he didn't like the fact that people were so suspicious of him just because his bodyguard was a little more agile. Remember, Yang Chundong is old Master Yang's son. It's impossible, and there won't be any problems. This was tantamount to the final conclusion. Hu Zhongning was angry. Although the two subordinates were still dissatisfied, they did not dare to say anything. They could only lower their heads and admit defeat. Hu Zhongning left. According to the information from the Security Bureau, the group of 12 people only stayed in an inconspicuous inn in Jianing Prefecture for one night before leaving. During this time, they did not meet anyone, including the Jianing Prefectural Magistrate, nor did they have the slightest intention of making things difficult for the Yang family's old house. This action puzzled Yang Chundong. Could it be that Hu Xiao is really close to my father, and they really came to pay respects? Shaking his head, Yang Chundong had to put this matter aside after arranging for the Security Bureau to investigate thoroughly. In the capital, Hu Zhongning returned to his residence after handing in the official task of inspecting the guards in the south. He had just gone to see his father, Hu Xiao, and roughly explained the process of the task. When he returned to the courtyard, his daughter, Hu Yan, came to greet him. The person he didn't want to see the most right now was probably his beloved daughter. He really didn't know how to say it, especially when two of his subordinates were taught a lesson. It made him feel even more ashamed. However, his daughter was not his subordinates. Since she came to find him, he couldn't hide from her even if he wanted to. In the study, Hu Zhongning was practicing calligraphy with a brush, which was also a way to calm his mind. A fragrance came to his nose, and Hu Yan, who was in her prime, walked in happily. "Father, I'm here to pay respects to you. You've worked hard this time." Hu Zhongning's heart sank. He knew that he couldn't hide, so he pretended not to see his daughter's anxious face, and continued to write with the brush. However, at this moment, the calligraphy was so awkward that he couldn't calm down. Of course, he couldn't practice calligraphy. Seeing that her father was pretending to be confused, Hu Yan, who was young and immature, asked softly, "Father, did you go?" "No." Hu Zhongning shook his head before his daughter finished speaking. He didn't want to talk about this matter, so he wanted to fool her. However, the consequences of such an answer were so serious that he obviously didn't expect it. "Ah. Father, why didn't you go? Didn't you promise your daughter? You don't care about your daughter at all." As she spoke, Hu Yan's tone already carried a trace of sobbing. The thing he couldn't stand the most was his daughter crying in front of him. Hu Zhongning was a little annoyed and wanted to turn around and leave, but he knew that if he did so, his daughter would probably cry in the study for an hour. "Sigh." Hu Zhongning, who loved his daughter, sighed and said, "You don't have to cry. I saw him." Hu Yan, whose tears were already rolling in her eyes, turned from gloomy to sunny in an instant. Her small hand couldn't help but reach forward and hold Hu Zhongning's arm. "Father, did you really go?" "Of course, why would I lie to you?" Hu Zhongning replied firmly. "But you just told your daughter that you didn't go." Who would have thought that Hu Yan would refute? Hu Zhongning's old face turned red, but he still didn't want to explain more. The main thing was that he couldn't afford to lose face. "Father was teasing you just now. Father has indeed seen the sixth young master. I also paid respects to old Master Yang and his wife." Speaking of paying respects to old Master Yang, this matter couldn't be false. Hu Yan also knew that this kind of matter related to the old man. Her father would never lie about it. At the same time that she was happy, she carefully asked in a probing tone, "Father, what does the sixth young master look like? What's his character like? What was he doing when you went there?" All right, I was just passing by to take a look." Hu Zhongning really didn't know how to answer. Could he say that it was because his subordinates were incompetent and were beaten up, to the point that his father was almost beaten up? He really didn't have the face to stay there, so he didn't stay for long and left? "Well, because I was in a hurry to go back, I didn't stay for long. After paying respects to the old man, I left. As for the sixth young master you mentioned, it seems that he's okay." Hu Zhongning really didn't know how to say, so he just told his daughter that it was okay. "Okay." Hu Yan's head was full of confusion. Obviously, she was a little dissatisfied with this kind of evaluation. Okay is okay, not okay is not okay. How can you say it's okay? Father suddenly remembered that I still have official business to attend to, so I left first. Hu Hu Zhongning didn't know what else his daughter would ask, and he didn't know how to answer, so he simply found an excuse and left. Hu Zhongning's movements were agile. Before his daughter could figure out what was going on, he flashed out of the study and then left the mansion. He didn't even have time to take a look at his wife and concubines, leaving Hu Yan standing alone in the study in a daze. "Miss, His Excellency has left." The servant girl Xiaoqing entered the study without anyone noticing. She looked at Hu Yan, who seemed to have lost her soul, and said softly, "It's okay. It's better than not, isn't it?" At this moment, Hu Yan suddenly figured it out. Although she didn't know why her father would answer her like this, she felt that it wouldn't be so simple. But since her father gave an evaluation of it, it was better than not okay and not okay. Hu Yan comforted herself. She really had the spirit of a modern IQ. Of course, this had a lot to do with the fact that she had a good impression of Yang Chendong first. Anyway, since this matter, Hu Yan didn't mention it again, and Hu Zhongning didn't mention it either. But after that, no one in the Hu mansion took care of the matter of proposing marriage for Hu Yan. By right, she would be 16 years old after the new year. Even if she didn't have a marriage, she should have a candidate. But no one did it, and no one asked about it. As her father, Hu Zhongning didn't know what he said to his wife and concubines. In short, no one mentioned it again. The people of the Security Bureau also came to the capital and carefully investigated the relationship between Hu Xiao and Yang Rong, but they didn't have many clues. After all, they didn't have any foundation here, especially when they were investigating the affairs of important officials. The final result was that the two were indeed on good terms, but it didn't seem to be a very good personal relationship. As for Hu Yan's matter, it wasn't in their investigation at all, so they naturally ignored it. A month later, the news came back to the old house of the Yang family in Jianing Mansion. Neither the Brocade Guard nor the Eastern Palace Guards did anything special to the Yang family. No strangers came to Jianing Mansion either. Since there was no need to worry about his safety, Yang Chendong naturally put things aside. Seeing that it was almost the new year, he still had many things to do. The bell of the year 1448 rang. People said that the new year was new. But in terms of the situation in the Ming Dynasty, there were no big changes. The eunuchs were still rampant and held great power. Chapter 41. In February, the Minister of Works, Wang Zhen, resigned and returned to his hometown. He had an upright and proud personality and was also a clean person, so he really couldn't stand Wang Zhen's actions. After he left, Shi Pu took over his position. The instability of the political system made the lives of the people even more difficult. In April, Deng Maoqi of Fujian rebelled. Deng Maoqi and Chen Zhengjing revolted. One after another they captured Sha County, Yoshi and other places. There were a lot of common people in the vicinity who agreed with them. The number of peasants who fell over each other to seek refuge with the rebel army reached several tens of thousands. The rebel army's reputation grew. Deng Maoqi established political power in Sha County's Qinshanzhai, calling himself the Ping Ping Wang. Shaxian was located in the north of Fujian province, not far from Jianing. For a moment, the people were in a state of panic, and Li Daotong, the prefect of Fujian province, even submitted a memorial requesting the imperial court to send troops to suppress them. In the Yang clan's old residence, Tiger's Mane, who had long since received the news, brought Beta Persei and 5 other brothers to the study. They knelt in front of Yang Chendong and begged him to leave. As the saying went, a gentleman would not stand under a collapsing wall. Now that old Madame Yang's mourning period was over, it was time to leave Jianing and head to the capital. That's right. It's time to leave. Yang Chendong slowly stood up from his wooden chair. But we shouldn't immediately head to the capital. First, we should go to Qiqian City to take a look. Even though Yang Chendong had given many suggestions on building the city, he hadn't been there himself. If he couldn't take a look, he wouldn't be able to rest easy. And once he went to the capital, it would be even more difficult to leave. If he didn't go now, he probably wouldn't have a chance for a long time. In the past, if Yang Chendong said that he wanted to go to Qiqian City before going to the capital, Tiger's Mane and the others would probably try to dissuade him. But now, as long as the young master was willing to leave Jianing, this dangerous place, they would agree to go wherever he went. Since no one objected, they immediately spent 2 days to pack their luggage. Yang Chendong went to the prefect's yamen and asked for a travel permit, saying that his mourning period was over, and he wanted to go to the capital to reunite with his brothers. Although there was no war in Jianing Prefecture, no one could guarantee that the flames of war would not spread here. As long as they had connections, which one of them didn't think of a way to leave? Although Yang Chendong was the governor of Jianing, he was actually just a minor official. In the end, he still had to go to the capital. Magistrate Li Daotong was already prepared for this and did not stop him. He gave him a travel permit and reminded him to pay attention to his safety before letting him go. At the end of April, Yang Chendong left Jianing Prefecture. It was unknown when he would be able to return. Perhaps it would be very difficult for him to return in the future. When he walked out of the gate of the Yang family's old mansion, he turned around and took a deep look at it. Then he strode out of the place. There was still a wider road ahead of him. Yang Wu and Yang Lu were responsible for protecting the kitchen maid, Yi Qiu'er, and the other 7 or 8 elders of the Yang clan's old residence, and their luggage as they left for Nanjing. Most of the supplies were from the kitchen. Yang Chendong had spent a long time preparing some of the items, which were related to his foothold in the capital. As Yang Chendong's kitchen maid, Yi Qiu'er's status had never been low. With her carefully watching over them, it was impossible for them to speed up even if they wanted to. These people would pass through Nanjing and eventually wait for the young master at Tianjinwei. Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, Yang Si, and Yang Chendong, who were protecting Shaoyin, left Jianing and headed southeast for the Black Dock. There were already ships waiting to take them to the new Qiqian city. Qiqian city had been occupied for more than half a year. At this time, it was being rebuilt according to Yang Chendong's plan. Everyone knew that this was not like the Black Dock. This place would become their new base, and it was highly valued. No one dared to do anything to the construction of the city. On the contrary, with everyone working together, the construction speed was very fast. In addition, the climate was pleasant. There was no cold in the 4 seasons of the year. The lowest temperature was only 5 or 6 degrees. The construction had never stopped, so it was not an exaggeration to say that there was a small change every day and a big change every 10 days. By the time Yang Chendong arrived, he could already see the embryonic form of a semi-modern city. Although it was semi-modern, it was because there was no electricity. Although they knew the location and direction of the rubber trees, there were still some practical problems to solve to reach that far with the navigation methods at that time. They could only wait for the advanced ships to be built before they could truly make the journey. Because of this, a new shipyard was established. With some advanced information provided by Yang Chendong, it was developing day and night. After all, as a city on the sea, the strength of the ships would always be the first. On this point, almost everyone had reached a consensus. Although there was no electricity, the straight and wide roads in the city had been built and open to traffic. It was the kind of road with 6 lanes on the left and right. For the population of Qiqian City, which was only tens of thousands of people, it was definitely enough. Even if more people joined in the future, it could also meet everyone's needs. At the same time, both sides of the Dao tree were shaded by trees. Under the circumstances of evergreen, the existence of these trees made people feel unusually cool and comfortable as they walked. It was not an exaggeration to say that they felt relaxed and happy. Not only were the sides of the road like this, but there were also such green settings everywhere in the city, reaching more than 30% of the city's proportion. The coverage of green branches could definitely be described as a garden city. For this matter, some people did not support at the beginning. They thought that a city was a place where people gathered to live. Transplanting trees in the city was simply a waste of resources. At least, other cities were not like this. Some people even took Beijing and Nanjing as examples, saying that there were many ancient capitals there, but they did not see so many trees planted in the city. It was just that because of Yang Chendong's strong influence, especially after Luan Xiaoyu and Luan Shaochen, those excellent political teachers, they entered the army, entered the people, and used their glib tongue to talk about the benefits of the 6th young master every day. It made everyone start to worship him. and there was even a faint feeling of creating a god. Of course, this god was naturally referring to Yang Chendong himself. With such a great influence, who would dare to oppose any of Yang Chendong's opinions? He was afraid that regardless of whether his superiors and subordinates could understand him or not, just the moment he returned home, his family would point at his nose and scold him. Why don't you think about it? Who brought you such a wonderful life? In this way, under the work of a group of political teachers, Yang Chendong was now a godlike existence in Qiqian City. Even a 3-year-old child, if you asked him who the current emperor was, he might not know. But if you asked who was the best person in the world, the answer would be the same. The 6th young master, Yang Chendong. There were discussions and different opinions, but when the tree transplants were completed, and the entire construction of Qiqian City had a rough outline, those who had various opinions immediately closed their mouths. Under the shade of trees that could be seen everywhere, when it was hot, one could find a place to cool down and feel the cool air. How wonderful was that? At this moment, everyone knew that the guidance of the 6th young master was correct, and those dissenting voices immediately disappeared. Especially according to the guidance of the 6th young master, all the old houses had to be demolished and rebuilt, and the new buildings had to be horizontal and straight. No matter how you looked at it, it had to be a line. At first, there were people who had doubts. They thought that this was a residential area, and it was fine as long as people could live in it. Why did it have to be like this? But when all the manpower and resources were gathered to build the first demonstration district, all the people who objected shut their mouths. The houses were orderly, and every street looked spacious and bright from afar. There was a school, a hospital, and a 3-story building that specialized in civil affairs. It dealt with domestic affairs and problems. Every few hundred meters, there would be a public toilet, and a few dozen meters away, there would be a green box of trash. There was even a solid wooden wheel that could be pushed around. Every day, when the sun rose, there would be people in charge of cleaning it up. Before there was any smell, it would be clean and tidy again. There were people who cleaned the streets every day, maintaining the cleanliness of the road. It made people feel good just by looking at it. There were also security guard towers. There were 2 in each residential area, on both the east and west sides. There were 6 soldiers in each guard tower. Every day, there were 3 shifts and they would be replaced at intervals. This greatly protected the lives and property of the people in the residential area. In the center of the district, there was a spacious concrete plaza. It could accommodate 1,000 people at the same time without feeling crowded. It was said that when electricity was produced in the future, there would be people who would teach people what kind of fitness dance to ensure that everyone had enough energy to have a place to pass the time. On the side of the plaza, there were some iron fitness equipment that could be used to strengthen the body and prolong the life of people. All of this was like a heavenly existence, causing everyone who came to visit to stare at it with their eyes wide open, their faces full of envy. No one would want to leave after seeing the reality of this place. They only wanted to live here forever and never leave again. Because of this, Yang Chendong heard that something almost happened. Everyone was arguing about whether they wanted to live here. This was a human being. A human being's basic selfish mentality. Sometimes, when there was no food, just having a bite to eat would be enough. And that would be enough. When there was real food, they would want to eat something good, and wear something good. When all of these were satisfied, they would have other thoughts. They would want to have more things. It was hard to satisfy the human heart. In the end, the matter was suppressed by the appearance of the Cold Vanguard Brigade. Although there were not many Cold Vanguard Brigade members, and some of the auxiliary troops contributed when they took down Crimson Embedded Island, increasing their numbers by more than 100, the real number was only about 500. However, they were all truly elite soldiers and generals. Chapter 42. It was not an exaggeration to say that if they used their equipment and combat power to deal with those semi-modern soldiers who were armed with cold weapons, or at most firearms, they would be able to fight against 10 or more of them. This was the benefit of having elite weapons. It was like the famous battle in history when Spain conquered the Inca Empire. At that time, Spain only had 200 soldiers, facing the Inca Empire's 100,000 soldiers. With such a huge contrast, the result was so heaven-defying. Spain won, and the Inca Empire was destroyed. For this, Spain obtained countless treasures. Yang Chendong was very puzzled when he heard this from an old military professor in the army. Even the old professor said that not to mention 100,000 soldiers, even if 100,000 wild horses were to charge at them, the result would not be like this. However, this was war. Victory was not decided by the number of people. Morale, quality of soldiers, weapons, and people's hearts were the key factors that determined the outcome of a war. The matter was forcefully suppressed by the Cold Front Brigade, and they announced the conditions for living in the residential area. Only those who had contributed were qualified to live in the residential area, and they also had to pay for it. They also promised that although there was only one residential area like this, it was just a test product. They would continue to build it in the future. In the end, those who were loyal to the sixth young master and worked hard would be able to live in such a beautiful place. Only then did the situation calm down. Therefore, the cement factory director, Jing Guang, who saw the benefits, began to increase production. He also followed Yang Chendong's suggestion and calculated the remuneration according to the work point system. The more hardworking and capable a person was, the more they would be paid. On the other hand, those who slacked off and cheated would only receive a basic salary. If they were found to be such a person for a long time, after 3 consecutive evaluations, if their work output and results were still at the bottom, they would be eliminated and assigned to other jobs. Yang Chendong was not God. It was impossible for him to give everyone a good life. He could only give those who worked hard to change their current situation a ladder to heaven, so that they could see heaven and experience the happy life there. As for those who slacked off and wanted to eat and wait for death, he could only say sorry. It was not that he wanted to give up on them, but they were the ones giving up on themselves. Everyone's curiosity was piqued by the way they were distributed according to their work and abilities. Speaking of the people of this era, especially those who were willing to leave their homes and come to Crimson City, which one of them didn't make such a choice to come overseas because they couldn't live anymore? Because of this, they all had one thing in common, which was that they were used to suffering since they were young. They already had a fixed way of thinking in their hearts. And that was, it was already very good to be able to eat a full meal with hard work. As for a house and a real home, they didn't even dare to think about it. But now, the sixth young master had given them a very fair platform. As long as they put in the effort, they would be able to reap the rewards. Furthermore, the rewards were quick and tangible. Under such circumstances, who wouldn't work hard? It was also because of the hard work of countless people who had suffered that Crimson City could develop so quickly. Surrounded by the crowd, Yang Chendong's face was as bright as the sun as he inspected the newly built residential area that had yet to be occupied. He was already 18 years old, and in addition to his mentality that was already in his 40s, it made him look even more mature. Very good. Your progress is faster than this young master imagined. You've all worked hard. Clatter. Following the applause of the crowd, there were people like Gao Xiong and Lung Song, who were in charge of military affairs. There were also people like the furniture factory director Li Xuanfu, the cement factory director Jing Guang, the paper factory director Kong En, the glass factory director Qin Ming, and the brewery director Hong Shi. For example, Qin Ming was appointed as the glass factory director because of his outstanding ability. After Yang Chendong found enough books and information in the warehouse, the appearance of glass was not a particularly difficult problem. Some things were difficult at the beginning, but once the first product was produced, the following things would be much easier. It was also Qin Ming's first time being so close to Yang Chendong. Looking at the sixth young master who was said to be like a god, he was excited and excited. Especially when the first piece of glass that was as smooth as transparent was produced under his supervision. He was a little dumbfounded. He was also full of confidence for the glass cup that was about to be produced. He did not expect that the transparent glass that the sixth young master had mentioned could really be produced. It seemed like the process was not very complicated. Of course, it was not difficult for people who knew how to do it. If one really wanted to do the research on their own, Who knew how many years or even generations of hard work it would take to achieve it? Now, every house in the first residential area had this kind of transparent glass installed. It was also a scene for everyone to see. When the sun hung high in the sky and shone on the house, it was so bright that it was like a miracle. Everyone was very excited. Being able to hear the praise of the sixth young master was an unspeakable honor. Now everyone only wished that the sixth young master could live to 100 years old, or even live forever. In this way, they could always follow him, including their descendants, and continue to enjoy endless blissful lives. Yang Chendong, who was standing in the middle, also noticed everyone's excited mood and expression. There was never a lack of smart people and people who were willing to work hard in this world. Such people often only needed a little push to do earth-shattering things. He was acting like Bo Lu, and these people were the horses. With everyone working together, there was really nothing that could not be done. After everyone's applause gradually stopped, Yang Chendong continued with a smile. You all did very well and worked hard enough. But what I want to say is that the speed is not fast enough. Because our development will only be faster, our population will only increase, and our territory will also be bigger. So there will be opportunities for you to show your strength and talent. I also hope that everyone can work together and strive to create one miracle after another. Good. We will definitely follow the sixth young master to create new miracles. Everyone roared loudly at this moment. It was as if they wanted to express their excitement completely through words. After finishing his speech, Yang Hodong had a specific discussion with the directors. For example, the director of the cement factory, Jing Guang, his request was to continue increasing the manpower and material resources. Now only a small district and the main traffic road in Chimney City were built, but there would be more districts in the future. Moreover, the current 4-story district was not very tall. In the future, they could consider building higher floors to ensure safety, which would also save more land. In the future, there would be more roads outside the city to be built, and there would even be more districts similar to Chimney City to be built. All of these required more cement, and the construction speed could not be slowed down because of the lack of raw materials. When talking with the director of the furniture factory and training factory, Li Xuanfu, Yang Chendong first expressed his appreciation for their recent hard work. For example, the fitness equipment in the district was very good. He even personally tried a few of them, and they were indeed very sturdy and reliable. He also took a look at the basic furniture in the house, and he expressed his satisfaction with the appearance of a few combination cabinets. But at the same time, he reminded Li Xuanfu that he could not be arrogant and had to continue working. This was especially true when it came to the training equipment. He could not allow a defective product to occur. He hoped that these things could be used for several decades, not that they would rust and become useless after 1 or 2 years. That would be an enormous waste. Yang Chendong requested that the director of the glass factory, Qin Ming, speed up the production while ensuring the quality of the products. He had already decided that he would be going to the capital in a little while, and it wouldn't be long before these things were brought there. When the time came, there would definitely be a great deal of demand. He hoped that there would be no problems with the supply of products, and that the quality of the products had to be guaranteed. He could not ruin his own reputation and so on. The paper factory had lived up to his expectations. After improving the technology, the first batch of toilet paper had already been produced. Although it was still somewhat crude, it was much better than the current sanitary products. While he requested Kong An to continue the modification, he also asked him to prepare for mass production. It would also enter the capital's market. After earnestly explaining to the factory directors what they needed to pay attention to, he went to the military factory, power plant, garment factory, brewery and shipyard. This time, Lung Song was in charge of taking down Crimson City. In the original plan, they did not expend much effort to take over the entire city. The amount of ammunition consumed was also very little, but this did not mean that they would not be able to fight in the future. Therefore, it was very important to produce ammunition on their own. Fortunately, after continuous hard work and the stimulation from the other factories, they were now able to produce normal bullets for the Type 81 assault rifle and Type 95 assault rifle. Although the quantity was still very limited, it was mainly due to the lack of gunpowder reserves. However, now that they were able to produce bullets themselves, it would greatly relieve the pressure on the warehouse. Although no one had ever asked the sixth young master where the bullets and weapons came from. But it was not practical to always rely on him to transform them. It would be best if he could produce them himself. In the garment factory, under Zhou Hua's constant urging and Luan Qi's hard work, the sewing machines had been produced. The quantity was not a lot, but it was enough to protect the tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians in Crimson City. Yang Chendong requested for more sewing machines to be produced. This was because when he went to the capital he would be importing more underwear, qipao, and even leather shoes. All of these needed to be supplied by the garment factory, because it could bring in a large amount of gold and silver. Chapter 43. The brewery was managed by a man called Hong Shi. He was not only responsible for the production of beer and wine, but also various other beverages. Chu Fifan found the recipes in the books and handed them to Hong Shi. Although he was still trying to make it, with the secret recipes that had been tested countless times, it was only a matter of time before he succeeded. The power plant and the shipyard were the most lacking in construction skills. The latter had been working hard, but until now, there was not a single new ship that they built. This made everyone anxious. Regarding this, Yang Chendong suppressed it with a sentence, "Haste makes waste." It was good to work hard, but it was not good to be in a hurry to achieve results. The new ship that was built in the future, no matter which one it was, would have to sail on the sea and even go to very far places. It would have to carry a lot of people and things. If there was a problem with the ship itself, who knew how many outstanding people would die because of it? This was something that he would never allow to happen. He suppressed the urge of the shipyard to build a ship. He only asked them to build a large ship that could travel long distances as soon as possible. That way, they would be able to travel to America. When the time came, they would be able to bring back a large number of rubber trees, which would be a great achievement. Without rubber, there would be no guarantee of electricity. Even the car would not have suitable tires. Luan Qi was very worried about this. As the youngest daughter, Xiaoyu was very anxious when she saw her father like this. She knew that the sixth young master had come to Resin City, so she went to look for him regardless. Of course, whether she went for her father's matter, or just wanted to see the sixth young master was another matter. Tiger's Mane and the others were Yang Chendong's personal guards, so they naturally knew about Xiaoyu. They also knew that the little girl was very liked by the young master, so they did not stop her. In a small palace that was built first in Resin City, Xiaoyu met the sixth young master. The small palace was originally built for Yang Chendong, although it was repeatedly emphasized that it was not necessary, and that it was fine to build a bigger house. However, the subordinates had reached a consensus on this point. They did not even ask for permission and built it on their own. From their point of view, the sixth young master had done so much for everyone's happiness. All he had to do was build a bigger and more beautiful palace. It was something that should be done. In this regard, Yang Chendong did not say anything when he saw that the wood was used as a boat. This was everyone's good intentions, so it was not good to refuse. Moreover, it was already built. After spending manpower and resources, it was impossible to rebuild it, right? As such, the time to rest was naturally within the small palace. Everything was fine, but there weren't many people here. Only Qiao Yin and a few guards were here. Xiaoyu's arrival made Yang Chendong very happy. Qiao, Qiao, Qiao. Because of their previous contact, they were also very close. Now that she could see Xiaoyu, she was very happy. It had only been half a year since she saw the sixth young master. Although Xiaoyu had imagined what it would be like when they met again many times, the moment she saw Yang Chendong, she could not stop her tears from flowing. They flowed down her cheeks as if they were free. Originally, Yang Chendong was very happy when he heard that Xiaoyu had come to find him. However, when he saw her crying so sadly, he did not know why, but his face became very gloomy. What is going on? Did someone bully Xiaoyu? Of course, this was not directed at Luan Xiaoyu. Instead, he looked at Tiger's Mane, the head of the security bureau. He wanted him to investigate and give him an answer. Tiger's Mane rarely saw the young master so angry. His heart tightened. He quickly lowered his head and replied, "This subordinate will investigate immediately." While replying, Tiger's Mane had already thought about it. If he knew who had made Xiao Yu angry, he would first deal with them, and then hand them over to the sixth young master. After Tiger's Mane agreed, he angrily rushed out. Xiao Yu was shocked. She knew that she had been misunderstood. She immediately stretched out her arms to stop Tiger's Mane. "Brother Tiger, no one bullied me. It's just that Xiao Yu misses the sixth young master too much." Tiger's Mane opened his mouth wide, not knowing what to say. The was indeed made by Yang Chendong. He knew that he had misunderstood and said awkwardly, "Tiger's Mane, you can go out and stay. There's nothing for you to do here." "Yes." Tiger's Mane hurriedly walked out as if he had been pardoned, leaving Xiao Yin behind. She walked up to Xiao Yu and grabbed her little hand with a smile. "The young master is very nervous. What about you?" "No, I just treat Xiao Yu like a little sister." When Yang Chendong heard this, he quickly explained. He then quickly turned around and went back into the house. He knew that some things would be better if he didn't explain. The more he explained, the messier it would be. When he first met Xiao Yu, he only thought that she was cute. That was why he gave her a piece of gum and hugged her. With his mental age, he really did treat her like a little sister. However, gossip was a fearful thing. In everyone's eyes, the two of them were only 7 or 8 years apart. In that era, it really wasn't a big deal. Some of the children and daughters-in-law of other families were raised at a very young age. After everyone talked about it a lot, even Xiao Yu started to believe it. Although she didn't really understand some things, she knew that the sixth young master was a good person. Being able to spend time with such a good person every day, of course she would be happy. When Yang Chendong saw Xiao Yu this time, he noticed that the little girl had grown taller. Due to her nutrition, her complexion had improved a lot. She was even more adorable and delicate. In a few years' time, she would undoubtedly become a beauty. Could this be a plan to raise a little lowly? When Yang Chendong thought that something like this would happen to him, he couldn't help but tremble. While he found it hard to accept, his heart was secretly filled with anticipation. Of course, he was just curious and looking forward to it. If Xiao Yu grew up and had a boy she liked, Yang Chendong definitely wouldn't stop her. A forcibly picked melon wasn't sweet. Feelings could never be forced. Outside the door, Xiao Yin was comforting the crying Xiao Yu, until he made her laugh. He then led her to the side hall where Yang Chendong was resting. At this time, Yang Chendong had already returned to his original calm and collected appearance. Looking at Xiao Yu, who had stopped crying and was even a little shy, he smiled and said, "You've worked hard for this period of time. This young master has decided to set up a publicity team. How about you be the leader?" "Ah, I'm the leader?" Xiao Yu pointed at herself in surprise. Her face was filled with disbelief. She looked a little cute and mischievous. After returning from the Yang village to the Black Pier, Xiao Yu used the songs that she had learned to praise Yang Chendong. Especially that song, "The East is Red." It had molded the sixth young master into a god who could solve the hardworking masses. This was why in Qiqian City, everyone worshipped Yang Chendong so much. In this, Xiao Yu's contribution was not small. However, she was still a girl who wasn't even 11 years old. Letting her be the publicity team leader was indeed a bold decision. Seeing Xiao Yu's shocked expression, Yang Chendong chuckled. "What? Are you worried that you don't have enough ability? Or do you not have confidence in yourself?" Thinking back to when Gan Luo was 8.5 years old, Hu Tsubing led troops at 16, and went on an expedition against the Xiongnu at 20. With these people as examples, why can't you be the publicity team leader? True talent did not need to be judged by age. Many people who had lived for a long time would also make mistakes when given a heavy responsibility. There were many young people who could create amazing results. Xiao Yu worshipped Yang Chendong a lot. This was an indisputable fact. The publicity team leader's current job was to promote Yang Chendong's achievements. Without a doubt, Wan Xiao Yu was a very good choice. At least there was no need to worry about her thinking. As for the publicity team entering the homes of the commoners and the army in the future, By that time, she would have grown up. At that time, she might be able to do even better. Even if she did not do well, there was still time to change. At least from the current situation. There were not many people who could replace Xiaoyu. There was another important reason for doing this, and that was to show that Yang Qindong did not stick to one pattern. Thinking about it, if a girl who was not even 11 years old was given a heavy responsibility because of her ability, then what was there to worry about for other young people? Can I do it? Although she was encouraged, she still lacked confidence. Yes, if the sixth young master says you can do it, then you can do it. On the other hand, Xiaoyin looked at Xiaoyu enviously. When she was Xiaoyu's age, she did not know how to do anything. She would even be afraid and shy when talking to people. Looking at Xiaoyu, under the careful guidance of the sixth young master, she was indeed able to be given a heavy responsibility. This made her envious. However, although she was envious, if Yang Qindong asked Xiaoyin to do something and wanted her to leave, she would definitely not agree. In her heart, she was already the sixth young master's woman. Even if he did not want her, she would not leave. Even if she had to die, she would die in front of the sixth young master. Xiaoyin also agreed, so Xiaoyu was confident. She was not young, but ever since she learned from Yang Qindong, her horizons had been broadened. Her father, Luan Qi, was the director of a power plant, and her mother, Zhou Hua, was the director of a garment factory. Many of her classmates had also become political instructors in the military. She was no longer the Luan Xiaoyu from a year ago who only knew how to chew gum. She had grown up. If it were not for her young age, Xiaoyu believed that she could have entered the military and become the first female instructor. Now that the opportunity was in front of her, she had no reason to reject it. Moreover, this was the sixth young master's idea, so she could not reject it. Okay, I'll do it. But what should I do with the sixth young master? Xiaoyu pursed her lips, gritted her teeth, and made up her mind. Chapter 44. The propaganda team has just been formed, so no one understands what's going on. It's easier to do the job, at least no one will understand if we make a mistake, right? In terms of the content and nature of the job, it's not much different from political instructors. Just that most of them work in the military and contribute to the military, but you're running between the military and the civilian. To put it bluntly, you're just there to promote our beautiful life and current situation. You can make up some jingles, sing some songs, give some examples, or even make some stage plays to let more people know about our lives. More people will take the initiative to settle down in Crimson City because of your efforts, contributing to the construction of our city. Of course, you still need to have a core. Yang Qindong explained in detail, but when he reached the core, Xiaoyu suddenly interrupted. I know, to promote the good of the sixth young master. This is the truth. Without the sixth young master, tens of thousands of us wouldn't be happy today. Yes, that's what I mean. Yang Qindong was embarrassed to say some things, but now that Xiaoyu had spoken first, he happily nodded and agreed. Just like that, Luan Xiaoyu became the first propaganda team leader of Crimson City, before the age of 11. She was also Yang Qindong's first propaganda team leader. That night, the sixth young master went to Xiaoyu's house and met with Luan Qi, the manager of the power plant. He advised him to focus on the preparation work, such as accumulating more coal, or thinking about the preparation work for wind and hydroelectric power generation. Once they found the rubber tree that could wrap and insulate the plants, it would be the time for the power plant to develop rapidly. Currently, the most important task was to help dressmaker Stone make more mechanical sewing machines. After settling the matter with Xiaoyu's family, Yang Qindong went to inspect the military and city defense. For the city's defense, Yang Qindong proposed to build 4 10-foot-tall watchtowers with high-powered binoculars. This way, once enemies or ships approached, they could be alerted in advance. This way, Crimson City would have more time to react. At the same time, they also built a fort outside the city. Not only did they have the Type 75 105mm recoilless cannon, they also prepared the Type 59-1 130mm cannon with an effective range of 30 kilometers. It could completely destroy the enemy before they even got close. This was because the cannons were too powerful. For safety reasons, Yang Chendong was worried that he would be hit by the cannons when he came here in the future. Thus, he only took out 2 cannonballs and locked them up. It requires the consent of Gao Xiong, Yu Guang, and the rising star Niatong before it can be used. Yang Chendong was using restrictions to control the army. There was no other way. Since ancient times, many facts had proven that the leadership of the army was so easy to change hands, and so easy to get into trouble. Yang Chendong also requested that in the future, whenever the Chisan City Navy went out to sea, they would have to hang a bright 5-starred red flag. He also said that 4 of the 5 stars represented scholars, agriculture, industry, and commerce, which were the components of a city and a country. As long as there was such a flag sailing on the sea, it would be protected. Of course, if other ships dared to fake the flag, there was no need to be courteous, and they would be dealt with first. After inspecting the navy, Yang Chendong met with the captain of the army, Lung Song, and told him about the Deng Maoqi uprising in Fujian. Lung Song, it's time for you to perform. Didn't you always say that you didn't have a chance to display your abilities? Now I'll give you that chance. I'll allow you to bring 100 members of Lung Feng and 500 support troops inland. But remember, unless it's absolutely necessary, do not harm the civilians. They are all our compatriots, and they are all Han. You can bring as many talents back to Crimson City without drawing any attention. We have too few soldiers and too few citizens. Hearing that he could finally go out and carry out his mission, Lung Song's calm demeanor changed, and he became extremely excited. 6th young master, if we meet the soldiers, should we fight or not? Don't fight. Unless it's absolutely necessary, don't make them your enemy. Of course, if you must fight, try not to harm them. Capture them alive and send them to Qian City. When the time comes, I'll get Gao Xiong to send ships to cooperate with you. Yang Chendong shook his head. During the confrontation between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party, there were some generals who shouted that Chinese people should not attack Chinese people. Then how could he possibly do such a thing as fighting with his own family? Although the population of the Ming Dynasty was not small, in Yang Chendong's eyes, it was far from enough. He wanted to conquer the world and spread the Han people all over the world. How could he do it with so few people? Lung Song finally understood that he was using the chaos to snatch people. Even so, he was still very excited because he could finally lead an army into battle. Although there were only 100 members of Lung Feng and 500 support troops, it was still a considerable force. With their abilities, they could do many things. Oh right, if possible, disguise yourselves as rebels and bring back more gunpowder. From what this young master knows, the various cities have stockpiles, it's just a matter of how much. Yang Chendong thought about the difficulties of the military factory and added, Young master, don't worry. Not just gunpowder, I will bring back anything useful. Lung Song patted his chest and promised. It was rare for him to have a chance to perform, he would not let it go. Following which, Lung Song brought his men and left. As for what he did, other than Gao Xiong and a few other higher-ups, no one else knew. Yang Chendong remained in Qian City, talking to everyone and solving all sorts of problems. Because this time he would not be able to return to Qian City for a while, so he had to solve as many problems as possible. Time passed, and it was the middle of June. Yang Chendong had been in Qian City for more than a month. The problems that should or could be solved, he had solved them, and the problems that could not be solved, he had pointed out the right direction. He had been here for quite some time, and the people of the Yang family were probably waiting anxiously in Tianjin, so it was time to leave. However, before leaving, Yang Chendong decided to hold another conferring ceremony to raise the morale of the troops. Compared to the previous time, there were more people conferred titles this time. Not only were there soldiers, but there were also people who had contributed to the local area. The conferring ceremony was held in the largest square in the city, the Central Plaza. The Central Square was also the city center of Resin City. Not far from here, there were the largest hospital, the largest school, the largest theater, the largest market, commercial houses were everywhere, making it the most prosperous shopping area in Resin City. The most restaurants and inns, as well as some government agencies. Today it was especially lively, and there was a sea of people. Roughly estimating, there were more than 15,000 soldiers and civilians. Yang Chendong was still in his Grand Marshal uniform, sitting on a large chair, waiting for the auspicious time to arrive. The microphone and loudspeaker from last time were taken out again, and with the help of solar energy, there would be no problems when using them. Before the ceremony began, they started with singing. Other than the 100 Cold Vanguard members that Lung Song had brought with him and the 100 Cold Vanguard members who were patrolling outside the city, the remaining 300 people from the 1st Company, 3rd Company, and 4th Company were all present. They were divided into 3 companies and sat neatly in front of the square. The 300 Lung Feng soldiers were seated at the front and were able to see the 6th young master at a close distance. Just this privilege alone was enough to make countless auxiliary soldiers envious. They also hoped that one day, they could be like these 300 people, wearing formal military uniforms with epaulets, collar flowers, and military ranks, and be the center of attention and envy of tens of thousands of people. The singing began. First, the 1st Company commander, Xiao Feng, took the initiative to stand up. His military posture was tall and straight. He placed his hands in front of him and said in a loud voice, "First Company, listen up. Comrades in arms are as close as brothers. Comrades, as close as brothers, I hope you can call us together. You are from." The orderly singing immediately resounded throughout the entire central square, causing everyone who heard it to feel their blood boiling with excitement. After he finished singing the song of comrades, Xiao Feng turned to look in the direction of 3rd Company and shouted, "3rd Company." The 100 soldiers of the 3rd Company shouted in unison, "Sing one." 3rd Company, "Sing one." 1 2 3 4 5. We've been waiting for a long time. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. We've been waiting for a long time. When the 3rd Company started singing, the 3rd Company commander, Tung Shan, suddenly stood up. This company commander, who used to be a bandit, did not have a good temper. When he saw the 1st Company rushing towards him, he immediately turned to the soldiers of the 3rd Company and shouted, "3rd Company, listen up. Forward, forward, forward. Ready to sing. Forward, forward, forward. Our troops are facing the sun." The singing began, raising everyone's morale and causing the atmosphere to reach a climax. In the end, when the 4th Company sang Dongfang Hong, it turned into a chorus of singing. The sound was like thunder, and the momentum was great. The entire scene became restless. Everyone was shouting and singing at the top of their lungs. When the auspicious time arrived, Yang Chendong, who was dressed in a marshal's uniform, walked up to the stage. As he raised his hand, the singing stopped, and the scene became quiet. More than 15,000 people, more than 30,000 pairs of eyes were staring at Yang Chendong. Next, I announce that the conferring ceremony has begun. Those whose names are called, please come up to the stage. Tiger's Mane, Gao Xiong, Xiaofeng Yuguang. This conferring ceremony was conducted in 2 ways, civil and military. Tiger's Mane, who was promoted from captain to major, was currently the person with the highest rank other than Yang Chendong. He was also the first officer in the system to become a field officer. Next were Gao Xiong, who was promoted to captain, Lung Song, who was not here, so someone else took the captain's rank, Xiao Feng, Tung Shan and Yu Guang, who were promoted from 2nd lieutenant to 1st lieutenant. The newly conferred ranks were naval officer Nia Tong, who was promoted to 2nd lieutenant. The newly established captain of the Wolf Fang Special Forces, Tai Hu, was promoted to 2nd lieutenant. The newly established captain of the Ghost Sniper Squad, Bai Zhua, was promoted to 2nd lieutenant. The newly established captain of the Eagle Squad, Tianfeng, was promoted to 2nd lieutenant. Chapter 45. For the sake of Yang Chendong's safety, 2 new groups of guards were added. The first group's leader, Qiu Vi, was given the rank of Private First Class. The second group's leader, Dao Xiao, was given the rank of Private First Class. And the newly formed cavalry leader, Zhu Feng, was given the rank of Private First Class. The first batch of 5 instructors, He Yang, Song Desheng, Zhu Ziguang, Qi Ming and Shi Yi, were given the rank of 2nd lieutenant. The first batch of political instructors, Luan Xiaochen, Jing Shuang, Kong Jie, Mo Chengyu and Ji Fei, were given the rank of private first class. Also worth mentioning was the youngest, Wan Xiaoyu. She was appointed as the first propaganda leader, and was given the rank of second lieutenant. Wearing the modified female officer's uniform, she looked valiant, showing off her noble temperament. It was unknown how many people's eyes lit up when they saw her. Many girls had already vowed in their hearts that they would work hard to exercise their bodies, study hard, and join the army in the future. They would become female soldiers and wear this eye-catching female military uniform like Wan Xiaoyu. Presumably, at that time, the door would be broken by the boys who would come knocking on the door. After Wan Xiaoyu, more than 100 official soldiers who had been transferred from auxiliary soldiers to the cold vanguard came to the stage. This was the last time Yang Qindong would give a title to a group of ordinary soldiers. This was because in the future, as the number of soldiers increased, he would not be able to handle it all by himself. Titles, necklaces, badges, and guns were given to each soldier. After the military titles were given, the next step was to give out awards to those who had contributed to Qixian City. There was also an appointment ceremony. The award system was set up to encourage those who had made a special contribution. There were 7 grades. From highest to lowest, they were first-class medal, second-class medal, third-class medal, gold medal, silver medal, bronze medal, and finally, iron medal. Each medal contained a certain amount of gold. It was not only an honor, but also a considerable economic value. It ensured that when the descendants of the winners were in dire straits, these medals could change the current situation of the family. The appointment ceremony was another way of giving an official title. The difference from the Ming Dynasty was that the title of an official was completely different. From the lowest to the highest, it was divided into 11 grades, namely Section Chief, Section Chief, Section Chief, Deputy Section Chief, Section Chief, County, Deputy Bureau Chief, City, Deputy Minister, Minister, Province, and the highest grade was the National Committee member. Those who were appointed and received the medal for the first time were Wu Gang, director of the munitions factory, Li Xuanfu, director of the furniture and training factory, Wan Qi, director of the power plant, Zhou Hua, director of the garment factory, Jing Guang, director of the cement factory, Qin Ming, director of the glass factory, Kong An, director of the paper factory, Hong Shi, director of the brewery, and Hong Yi, director of the shipyard. They were all appointed to the rank of section chief and awarded silver medals. Whenever someone went up to the stage to receive an award, there would be a round of applause from the audience. The thunderous sound greatly twisted everyone's hearts together. With the active efforts of Wan Xiaoqin and the other instructors, Crimson City had become an iron fortress. At this point, Yang Qindong could finally relax and head to the capital. On the 3rd day after the ceremony, Yang Qindong left. He did not inform too many people and left quietly. This was related to the fact that he did not like scenes of life and death. However, when the sun had just risen and he was about to leave, he saw that the people of the city were already standing on both sides of the street, waiting to send him off. In the crowd, Wan Xiaoyu was crying her eyes out. Even though she was already an officer and did not want to cry in public, when she saw Yang Qindong, who had changed into a green robe, she could not stop her tears from flowing. When had Yang Qindong ever wanted to go to the capital? However, he still had the blood of the descendants of China, and his brothers and sisters were also in the capital. If possible, he did not want to become enemies with the Ming Dynasty. This time he was trying to change something. If possible, he was even willing to coexist with the Ming Dynasty. After all, this was a dynasty with backbone. The sovereign was willing to die for the country, and the Son of Heaven guarded the gates of the country. This was not something that the sovereigns of other dynasties could compare to. Of course, he could also establish his own country in Qiqian, just like Deng Maoqi, who was causing trouble in Fujian. However, if he did that, who knew how many people would die in the flames of war? Unless it was absolutely necessary, he absolutely did not want to do that. As Yang Qindong was about to leave, Gao Xiong, the highest military commander, appeared in the front row. Gao Xiong, this day is too short. This young master wanted to go with you to explore Ryukyu Island. It would be best if we could fight a few battles to our heart's content, but time waits for no one. I will leave this matter to you. But remember, If you can avoid killing people, do so. Most of the people living here are Han, and they were forced to leave their homes to come here. Give them a chance if you can, understand? This was not the first time this matter had been emphasized, and Gao Xiong immediately stood at attention. Young master, be at ease. Gao Xiong will definitely kill fewer people and capture more people. Okay. Yang Chendong gave a firm nod, and then, under the protection of his guards, he followed the smooth and spacious cement road out of Crimson City, accompanied by the reverent gazes of the soldiers and civilians. Compared to when he had first arrived, the number of guards at his side had greatly increased. When he had arrived, including Xiao Yin and Yang Chendong, there had only been 5 of them, but now there were 25 of them. Qiu Vi and Dao Xiao each led 2 groups of 20 guards. The group boarded the ship first, and then when it was almost noon, they arrived at the Black Pier and disembarked. Tell them to keep a sufficient distance from us. If there's no danger, don't appear. Yang Chendong didn't want to be too ostentatious. He was going to the capital, a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. There were all kinds of people there. If they found out that he, a mere 9th-level official, had returned to the capital with so many guards, it would be strange if they didn't become vigilant. Tiger's Mane went to inform Qiu Vi and Dao Xiao. Within the carriage, Xiao Yin leaned against Yang Chendong and said with a yearning expression, "Young master, Iner also wants to be a female officer. Little sister Xiao Yu's military uniform is so beautiful. Iner is so envious." "Good. If Iner is willing, I'll have one made for you in the future." When he thought about how the grown-up Xiao Yin would look in a military uniform, Yang Chendong's eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of longing and anticipation. Xiao Yin did not notice any of this. She was a little careless, so she asked in a bold and unrestrained manner, "Young master, is the capital fun?" This young master only stayed there when he was a child, so I don't have much of an impression of it. But I think it should be fun, Yang Chendong said with a hint of hope in his eyes. This was the capital of the Great Ming Dynasty, the predecessor of Beijing. He truly wanted to see just how majestic and magnificent that place was. Without the wide cement roads, the carriage could not go fast even if they wanted to, and they also had to consider Xiao Yin's feelings. Just the journey from the Black Pier to the Tianjin Guard took more than a month. After meeting up with Yang Wu, Yang Lu, Yi Qiu'er, and the others, they began to make their way to the capital. Even though it wasn't a very long distance, it still took them 10-some days to walk. By the time they finally saw the high walls of the capital, it was already the end of the 8th month. Steward Yang Hai had long ago received the news and had been waiting at the gate with his son Yang Chendong. When he received Yang Chendong, he did not even enter the gates of the capital. Instead, he circled around the walls of the capital and made his way to the New Yang Manor 15 li south of the city. As early as last year, Yang Hai had used the money to buy a manor with a total of 2,000 mu of land. Now there were high-yield potatoes planted here that no one knew about. Seeing that the harvest was not far away, some of them had basically matured. After more than a month of traveling, even Yang Chendong was exhausted, let alone Xiao Yin and Yi Qiu'er. The moment they arrived, they found their rooms and went to sleep. Yang Chendong truly could not rest at this time, as there were far too many things he needed to take care of. He first met with Yang San, who had arrived 3 months earlier, and gained a basic understanding of the current situation in the capital. From what he had heard, Wang Zhen and the other eunuchs were still in control of the court. Although Zhu Qizhen was already 21 years old, he was still like a child listening to his teacher, Wang Zhen, on everything, to the point that he had lost his ability to make basic judgments. As a result, those officials who did not like this and refused to lower their heads to Wang Zhen were mostly punished. There were even some who were imprisoned by the Eastern Cabinet. Other than the ministers of the 6 bureaus and a few important officials, very few people could stand in the imperial court and speak the truth. The situation was so severe that it was no wonder the incident at the Tumu Castle occurred 1 year later. It was precisely after that incident that the Great Ming began to weaken, entering the middle stage of its development. Zhu Qizhen was not a bad person at heart, and he had a good heart. It was just that he was not good at using people. For example, when it came to eunuchs, he had first used Wang Zhen, and later on he had used Chao Jixiang, causing the great Ming to constantly fall from grace. This was particularly true of Wang Zhen. It had clearly been proven that he was the greatest culprit behind the Tumu Castle incident, but later on, when Yingzong regained the throne, he had actually rehabilitated him and granted him a temple. Yang Chendong truly didn't know what to say in the face of such an emperor. As he had said before, Yang Chendong did not want to become enemies with the great Ming, and he still felt some admiration for this dynasty. Besides protecting the safety of the Yang clan, he had also come to the capital to single-handedly reverse the course of the imperial court. But now, it seemed that while his thoughts were beautiful, reality was cruel. Yang Chendong retracted his thoughts and thought of his older brothers and sisters. Enough. Tell me about my family. Chapter 46. There was no doubt about Yang Rong's ability to govern. Even when it came to giving birth, he had a total of 13 children. 6 of them were boys and 7 were girls. In that era where medical treatment was not advanced, giving birth to a child was like going through the gates of hell for many pregnant women. However, these children had all grown up. Other than the second daughter, Yang Xia, who died of illness, the others were all living well. Moreover, her brothers were all officials, and most of her sisters were married to people with official positions. The eldest brother, Yang Gong, went by the courtesy name of Yushan. He was the deputy of Shangbao, a rank 6 official. He was in charge of the emperor's imperial jade seal, talisman, and seals. However, it was just a nice title. In reality, it had nothing to do with him. The second brother, Yang Rang, went by the courtesy name of Xingda. He was the one who was doing the best. He was in charge of the Ministry of Rights, and was a rank 6 official. He was also the only one who had some actual power. Yang San's investigation showed that this second brother wanted to replace his eldest brother, and become the leader of the Yang family. The third brother, Yang Shi, went by the courtesy name of Wanming. He was in charge of the Ministry of Rights, and was a rank 9 official. In the end, he was just a little stronger than ordinary officials. The fourth brother, Yang Yang, went by the courtesy name of Qingda. He was a rank 8 official in the Imperial College. Later he retired because he beat someone up. Now he stayed at home and ate and drank when he had nothing to do. He had become a complete hedonist. The fifth brother, Yang Guifang, went by the courtesy name of Wanlin. He was a rank 9 official in the Zhang government. He was in charge of the internal affairs of the imperial family. These were the 5 brothers of Yang Chendong of the Yang family. Looking at the records, the 6th young master smiled bitterly and shook his head. He thought that after Yang Rong passed away, the future of the Yang family would not be as good as before. However, he did not think that it would be so bad. This was basically the same as being kicked out of the imperial court. If no one in this generation worked hard, it was likely that the next generation would completely disappear into the crowd. It seemed that it would not be easy to turn the situation around. Yang Chendong had to do a lot of things. Forget it. Since I am here, the situation will naturally change. Yang Chendong said confidently in his heart. Then, she took the information of the 6 sisters and read it. Unknowingly, she fell asleep. The next day, the second day after Yang Chendong arrived at the Yang clan manor, it welcomed its first group of guests. They were the Yang family's 4th brother Yang Yang, 5th brother Yang Guifang, 5th sister Yang Li, 6th sister Yang Qin, eldest brother's son Yang Zhao, 2nd brother's son Yang Yan, and 3rd brother's son Yang Luan. With the sudden arrival of so many relatives, the main hall of the Yang family village became very lively. Yang Chendong was no longer as tired as he was yesterday. He was now full of energy. He, who was still dressed in green, greeted his brothers and sisters one by one. This was the first time that Yang Dong, not that Yang Chendong, saw these relatives. When his mother passed away, although they had personally or sent people to the Yang family mansion, at that time, Yang Chendong was in a coma due to grief and did not see them at all. Haha, 6th brother, your spirit is much better than when you were young. How is it? Is there any problem with your body? 4th brother Yang Chendong was tall and big. He was half a head taller than the current Yang Chendong. As soon as they met, he patted his shoulder affectionately. Seeing that Yang Chendong was indifferent and unaffected, He nodded his head in satisfaction. Not bad, your body is fine. From now on, follow fourth brother. I will bring you to see the prosperity of the capital. If there are any blind people, the two of us will beat them up together. Ahaha. A hedonistic son was indeed a hedonistic son. The moment they met, he invited them to fight together. Fourth brother, sixth brother has just arrived. Don't lead him astray. Fifth brother Yang Chendong had the face of a scholar. He looked honest and sincere. He was afraid that fourth brother would lead Yang Chendong astray, so he spoke up to ease the situation. Enough, fifth brother. If you don't want to fight with fourth brother, then don't stop sixth brother, okay? Ever since father passed away, look at what our young family has become. Even if we have to live with our tails between our legs, we should still have the courage to go out and fight. The more he spoke, the angrier he became. Yang seemed to want to use this opportunity to vent something. In this regard, Yang Chendong vaguely felt something, but he didn't point it out. After all, the investigation by the Security Bureau was only superficial. He still needed to find out the character of his brothers and sisters by himself. Okay. Seeing that the family was about to quarrel as soon as they met, fifth sister Yang Li hurriedly interrupted. Sixth sister Yang Qin didn't even look at her two brothers. Instead, she smiled at Yang Chendong and said, Sixth brother, you must have had a hard time on the road. I heard that there is a disaster in Fujian. You didn't encounter it, did you? No, I was hiding. Yang Chendong chuckled. He didn't seem to be a shrewd person, but inside he was happy because of these words of concern. In his previous life, Yang Dong was an orphan. He grew up in the village, and was busy running around when he joined the army. He didn't even have a home. He also didn't have any brothers or sisters who cared about him. Now that he had these brothers and sisters, there were people who cared about him. This made him very happy. That's right. When a scholar meets a soldier, he can't explain himself. Hiding is the right thing to do. Yang Qin also chuckled. Yang Chendong nodded repeatedly. Then he had Xiaoyin bring out the prepared fruit platter. This was all made by the cook Chioer. It was modified according to Yang Chendong's suggestions, so it naturally tasted good. When the fruit platter was brought out, the brothers and sisters all praised it loudly after tasting it. This was especially true for the three nephews. They ate until their hands and mouths were full. Even though their stomachs were stuffed, they still didn't look satisfied. Don't worry. When we leave later, each of you should bring 2 platters back and let your family have a taste. Yang Chendong was still chuckling. At the same time, he felt a little bitter in his heart. Although the fruit platter tasted good, it didn't seem to be enough to make the Yang family eat to such an extent. However, this was still the case. It was obvious that the descendants of the Yang family didn't have a good life. It was far worse than he had imagined. Haha, 6 brothers' food is indeed delicious. When we leave later, let's bring some back and share it with your sisters-in-law. Yang said without hesitation. Then his gaze landed on Yang Chendong and the other nephews. He waved his hand and said, "Since you've seen them and eaten, you can go out and play." Yes. Yang Chendong and the other 2 nephews felt a little awkward staying here. Since they had the chance to go out and relax, they naturally agreed. Soon only Yang Chendong, his 2 brothers and 2 sisters were left in the main hall. Without his children around, Yang's expression suddenly became much more solemn. "Sixth brother, what do you intend to do in the capital this time around?" "Of course, I'm going to become an official." "Sixth brother might be young, but you're already a rank 9 official. Of course, you have to serve the royal court." Before Yang Chendong could reply, 5th brother Yang Guifang had already made the decision for him. "Become an official?" Yang's voice was filled with disdain when he heard those words. "My brothers, including me, are all officials, but what have we done? We're just idling away our days and using up the legacy our father left for us. Now that the eunuchs are in power, I don't think there's any point in becoming an official." Yang had beaten up a little eunuch who didn't know his place. If Yang Rong was still around, this wouldn't have been a big deal. But now eunuchs had extremely high statuses. If not for the fact that his father was Yang Rong, and that the little eunuch didn't have any status, Yang would have already been sent to prison. It was unknown whether he was still alive or not. What else can you do if you don't become an official? You have to live your life, right? Yang Guifeng didn't agree with fourth brother's opinion, and his words carried a hint of rebuttal. There are many ways to live your life. Now that sixth brother has the Yang family manor, it's enough for you to support yourself. Why do you need to become an official and suffer such humiliation? The more Yang spoke, the more agitated he became. His face was flushed red, as though he was reminiscing about his past. Seeing that fourth brother and fifth brother were about to quarrel again, Yang Chendong naturally didn't want to break the harmony. He smiled and said, "Even if you don't become an official, you can still do business. That way you can earn more money and support yourself." Originally, Yang Chendong just wanted to say that there were many other ways to go if he didn't become an official. There were many choices. But he didn't expect that when these words came out, the entire central room immediately became quiet. Everyone looked at him with surprise and shock. What? Did I say something wrong? Yang Chendong had a puzzled look on his face. Thinking back carefully, he didn't do anything excessive. That. Sixth brother, don't make fun of sixth sister. I did marry a businessman, but he still treats me well. I'm quite satisfied. The sixth sister Yang Qin spoke. As she spoke, she lowered her head, as if she had done something shameful. And, what's going on? Yang Chendong was even more confused. He really didn't know why everyone was looking at him like this, and he didn't know why sixth sister would say this. Yang Chendong opened his mouth wide with a puzzled look. He looked at fifth sister Yang Li's eyes. Sixth brother, do you really not know? Your sixth sister married a businessman. You also know that a businessman's status is only slightly better than a slave status. It's even worse than an ordinary person. Oh. At this moment, Yang Chendong suddenly remembered that in the Great Ming Dynasty, people were divided into classes. To be specific, they were divided into 5 classes. The first class was the noble class, which was usually dominated by aristocratic families. The second class was the good class, which referred to ordinary people. The third class was the merchant class, which, as the name suggested, was a merchant. The fourth class was the slave class, which was the status of a slave. Once sold, it might be a slave class for life, unless the master was willing to give the government a large sum of money to change the class. The children born would also directly become a slave class. The fifth class was the cheap class, which referred to prostitutes, actors, and so on. Chapter 47. In the Ming Dynasty, there was a clear hierarchy. When the Ming Dynasty entered a period of decline, the merchants slowly developed to the same level as the commoners. Since ancient times, money made the world go round. However, the sixth sister, Yang Qin, married a merchant. Because of this, the eldest and second brothers of the Yang family were very unhappy. However, their father had already passed away and their mother was still alive. So it became a reality. Just now, Yang Chendong casually said that he could do business to earn money. It was no wonder that everyone looked at him like that. Even the sixth sister, Yang Qin, took the initiative to explain. It was reasonable for them to think that she was secretly hinting at him. Suddenly thinking of this, Yang Chendong immediately said to the sixth sister, "It's my fault. I really didn't think too much. Also, when I said business, I wasn't talking about other people. This is my true thoughts." Your true thoughts? Sixth brother, are you really going to do business? The straightforward fourth brother, Yang, widened his eyes in disbelief. Yes. Yang Chendong knew that some things had to be explained clearly in advance. Otherwise, if he did something and his brothers and sisters came to persuade him, it would be bad for his face. Business can earn money and strengthen the country. Why not? Also, I'm not just doing business. I can do business as an official. That way, won't there be some benefits? Do business as an official. This time it was the fifth brother, Yang Guifeng, who shook his head. Sixth brother, you should know that if an official wants to do business, the lowest rank one can do it. You're only a 9th rank official right now. It's easier said than done. Rising from the 9th grade to the 5th grade was more than just 3 grades in a row. One had to go from the 8th grade to the 7th grade to the 6th grade to the 5th grade. Even if one wanted to reach 5th rank, one had to go up 7 ranks. Even the eldest and second brother, who were doing the best in the Yang family, were only 6th rank. Even if they wanted to go up half a rank, it was extremely difficult. How old was Yang Chendong? And he didn't have any contributions. Wanting to do this was no different from a fantasy story. It's fine. I know what I'm doing. Yang Chendong just smiled calmly. Since he wanted to do business, he naturally knew the rules here. He had already thought of a way and believed that it wouldn't be difficult to get a 5th rank official. Since Yang Chendong said so, everyone just thought that he wanted to save face and didn't want to show weakness. Therefore, they didn't dwell on this matter and talked about other things. After this conversation, Yang Chendong's mood became very bad. He was even furious in his heart. According to what 5th sister Yang Chendong had said, after knowing that 6th brother had come to the capital, all the elder brothers and sisters should have come. However, eldest brother and second brother were proud of their status. They were elders, and their official ranks were much higher than Yang Chendong's. 6th brother should have been the one to pay them a visit. As for 3rd brother, he was angry. He had worked hard for many years to get an official position, and he was still a 9th rank official. However, his 6th brother was so much younger than him, and was already a 9th rank official. This made him lose face. Thus, like eldest brother and second brother, he sent his own son to come as a formality. The elder brothers were like this, but the elder sisters didn't have the intention to use their status. They all had their own reasons and difficulties. Eldest sister Yang Fei was indeed unwell. It had been a while, and it was said that she was much better. However, she didn't want to bring her illness to her younger brother. Thus she didn't come. As for 3rd sister Yang Jing, 4th sister Yang Mei, and 7th sister Yang Duo, it was because they didn't have a choice. This choice referred to the fact that they didn't have any say in their husbands' families. Moreover, because of the decline of the Yang clan, their status in their husbands' families had plummeted. Now, even though they knew that 6th brother had come to the capital from Jianing, they still couldn't ask for leave and couldn't come to see him. Eldest brother, second brother, and 3rd brother, whether they wanted to save face or were embarrassed, they didn't come. In any case, Yang Chendong was the youngest. At worst, he could just go and see them. However, the matter of 3rd sister, 4th sister, and 7th sister really made Yang Chendong furious. As a woman, her own younger brother came from thousands of li away, but she didn't even have the freedom to see him. Was she getting married, or being a servant, or being ordered around like an old mother? At this moment, Yang Chendong really wanted to take a gun and kill his way to their door. He wanted to ask those 3 so-called in-laws of the Yang clan what they wanted to do. Were they tired of living? Yang Chendong's expression became very ugly. 5th sister Yang Li quickly shut her mouth. On the other hand, 4th brother Yang Yang was still chattering. Who can be blamed for this? When they were getting married, no one forced them. They were all willing. Especially that Wang Go that 7th sister wanted to marry. At that time I was against it. He came from a poor family. Once he gained power, he entered the Hanlin Academy and became a student. However, he was only a 9th rank official. This already showed the authority of the eldest brother. How can such a family be good after marrying over? Also, her mother-in-law, Madame Yan, is famous for being difficult to deal with. But what's the use of me saying it? Would she listen to me? Yang Chendong was still complaining when he suddenly asked in a somewhat angry tone. Since you know that 7th sister isn't living well, then as 4th brother, why don't you care? Her parents are no longer here. Who are you waiting for to make the decision? Yang Chendong's sudden anger stunned everyone in the main hall. The great Ming Dynasty was like this. A married daughter was like spilled water. If her life wasn't good in her husband's house, it could only mean that her life wasn't good. How could there be anything for her family to worry about? Even if it was the emperor's younger sister, the princess, after marrying, she had to follow the chicken. There were also many examples of her suffering and suffering. So what if it was the imperial family? He didn't see them do anything about it either. Yang Duo was only the 7th daughter of the Yang family. Now that she married into the Wang family, She was a member of the Wang family and didn't have much to do with the Yang family. How could Yang care about this? These principles were understood by all adults. Even those who were illiterate were clear on this. However, Yang Chendong's questioning tone caused fourth brother Yang Yang's expression to become somewhat displeased. Oh, so you're saying that it's my fault? Big brother and second brother also know about this matter. I don't see them caring about it. Also, if sixth brother can, then you should care about it for me to see. But don't say that I didn't warn you. If you really care about it, once it's reported to the authorities, I'm afraid you won't be able to bear the consequences. At that time, the one who will lose face will only be you. Enough. Since you don't dare to care, then don't say any sarcastic words. Later, sixth brother, I'll go care about it. Yang Chendong said with determination. He was someone from the future. If these rules were reasonable, he would naturally abide by them. But if they weren't, then sorry, to hell with it. Yang Chendong definitely had to care about it. With such strength, if he could ignore his own sister's suffering and couldn't even say a word, then what was the point of having such strength? What was the point of coming to Yang Chendong's body? Wouldn't that be letting down the heavens' favor to him? Sixth brother, you have to be careful. Don't be blinded by anger and do something wrong. Now that father isn't here, if something really happens, I'm afraid no one can help our Yang family. Fifth sister Yang Li and sixth sister Yang Qin both anxiously comforted him. They could see that their sixth brother was really angry this time. Yang Li regretted telling the truth. She thought that her sixth brother was educated and polite, so he should be cautious in doing things. She didn't expect him to have such a reckless personality. If she had known, she wouldn't have said it even if she was beaten to death. It's okay, fifth sister and sixth sister. I know what to do. Although Yang Chendong was a little angry, he wasn't unable to distinguish right from wrong. He knew that his sister was worried about him, so she said such words. Because of Yang Chendong's sudden change in attitude, and even questioned fourth brother Yang. This made everyone's face become a little ugly. Originally, they were going to stay here for lunch, so everyone lost interest and found a reason to leave first. Leaving Yang Chendong alone in the main hall, his expression was very ugly. Young master, what's wrong with you? Is there something that has made you angry? Anger is harmful to the body. You must be open-minded when something happens. Xiaoyin walked in. Just now, it was the Yang family's people who were talking. She was just a maid, so of course, it wasn't good for her to stay there, so she didn't know what happened. It's okay, Iner doesn't need to worry. Yang Chendong suppressed the anger in his heart and said to Xiaoyin with a smile. But then his tone changed and became extremely cold. He shouted outside the main hall. Tiger's mane, get your ass in here for this young master. A figure suddenly appeared like a ghost. Tiger's mane half knelt on the ground with a plop. Young master, please give your orders. Although he didn't know why the sixth young master was angry, Tiger's mane felt a murderous aura. He had already prepared himself. Once the young master said that he wanted to kill someone, he absolutely wouldn't blink an eye. Go investigate that person called Wang Go and his mother, Madame Yan. I want to know the current state of my seventh sister's life. Once you're done, report back immediately. If there's no news before nightfall, all members of the security bureau in the capital will be fined a year's salary and receive 10 strokes of the military rod. Yes. If there's no news before nightfall, Tiger's mane will come see me with his head. He stood up and turned around. At this moment, Tiger's mane hated that person called Wang Go to the core. Only then did Xiaoyin know that the young master was annoyed by the matter of the Yang family's seventh sister. She hurriedly got up and walked behind Yang Chendong. She lightly patted his shoulder and said softly, Sixth young master, is seventh young miss unhappy? It's not unhappy, it's very bad. Do you think a woman's life is so bitter that she has to follow her husband's lead after marrying into a man's family, without the slightest bit of opposition? Moreover, she has to share a man with several other women, and she still has to smile happily. Can anyone really do that? Chapter 48. As Yang Chendong spoke, he thought about how in the modern society, men and women were said to be equal and women could hold up half the sky. But in reality, women were spoiled to the heavens. If things did not go well, they would be threatened with divorce. In some big cities, the divorce rate was higher than the marriage rate. Even so, women would still feel unbalanced and think that they were unlucky to not have met a good man. If they were allowed to come here, they would quickly reflect on themselves and realize how fortunate they were. Yang Chendong was still arguing for the women of the modern era, but Xiao Yin said matter-of-factly, "If you marry a chicken, follow the chicken. This is a natural thing. Women are born like this. They have to prioritize men. Men are their sky. Whatever they want us to do, we will do it. If we make a man angry, then it's our fault. The fault lies with us." Yang Chendong was speechless again. He realized that discussing women's rights with Xiao Yin was not going to work. Even if it was for their own good, after thousands of years of education, some things could not be changed so easily. Even if it was for their own good, it would take time for them to accept it. Forget it, forget it. Yang Chendong shook his head and gave up on the idea of reasoning with Xiao Yin. Perhaps no matter how things changed, there was one thing that would not change, and that was to not reason with women. Otherwise, the one who would be hurt would be the man. Tiger's mane moved quickly. In just 4 hours, he arrived at Yang Chendong's study. Then, some information about Wang Go was placed on the desk. Yang Chendong waved his hand and told Tiger's mane to rest. He believed that he must have not eaten. After there was no one else around, he picked up the information and started reading. Wang Go, from Nanjing, came from an ordinary background. His ancestors had been farmers for generations. When it came to him, he was diligent in his studies and became a scholar. In addition, he had a dignified appearance. When a man reached the Tao, even his chickens and dogs rose to the heavens. His dog life was not bad. He entered the Hanlin Academy and became a student, a 9th-rank official. Then, when he entered the capital, Wang Go left his daughter who had served him for many years in the Nanjing countryside, and married the 7th daughter of the Yang family, Yang Duo. For someone like Wang Go to be able to marry the daughter of the late minister of the Ministry of Works was a very fortunate thing. For this reason, he was proud of himself for a long time. However, after marrying her, he realized that although his wife looked decent, she was just a flower vase. She did not know how to do any housework. Because of this matter, the relationship between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law was very tense. At first, Wang Go would say a few good words for Yang Duo, but after a long time, he found that this woman had nothing good about her except for her good looks. In addition, the Yang family's influence was getting weaker and weaker. In the end, he began to dislike them. At first, he only scolded them a few times. Later on, there were punishments. Until now, he even took back the right to leave the house. In the beginning, Wang Go was still a little afraid because he knew that Yang Duo had 5 brothers and 5 sisters in the capital. If these people came to find him, he was afraid that it would not look good for him. However, after a long time, no one asked about it at all. He was completely relieved. He directly ordered Yang Duo around as if she was a maid. He found another average-looking concubine to accompany her. Normally, such a thing would not happen in the Great Ming Dynasty. But when they encountered such a thing, they could only endure it. If the family was strong enough, they might be able to influence it. If the family was weak, no one would care or ask about it. Even if the woman died one day, her family could only sigh and lament that her fate was not good. This was the state of the country. In the face of such a common phenomenon, it was impossible to change it with the strength of 1 or 2 people. Unfortunately, Yang Duo was Yang Chendong's sister. Although their relationship wasn't very good, Yang Duo was Yang Chendong's sister. In the past, Yang Chendong would not care about 7th sister's business. However, it was impossible for the current 6th young master to do so. Not to mention that he had already bragged in front of his brothers and sisters. He was the 6th young master of the Yang family. He would not allow others to bully the Yang family. He had been thinking about how to make a commotion in the capital. Now, it seemed that the breakthrough was in front of him. Early the next morning, Yang Chendong did not do morning exercises. He hurriedly ate breakfast with Tiger's mane and rode the new steward Yang Mengbei's horse to the capital. Yang Chendong and Bai Yunfei only took less than an hour to cover the distance of 15 miles. Dismounting from his horse, the sixth young master looked at the Yongding gate above his head and said firmly, "Tiger's mane, lead the way." After entering the Yongding gate and passing through Lulikang, they arrived at a house facing the street. The two words Wang Residence on the gate were very obvious. Compared to the small houses next to it, it was like a crane in a flock of chickens. "Young master, this is the place. Should I go and knock on the door?" Tiger's mane dismounted and walked in front of Yang Chendong to ask for instructions. "What are you knocking for? Smash it open." Yang Chendong's eyes were burning with anger. This was the Wang residence where his seventh sister had married, and also Wang Go's residence. Yesterday, Tiger's mane found out that Wang Go was off work today and was at home. This was the best time to deal with him. Yes. After yesterday's investigation, Tiger's mane found out what had happened to the seventh young mistress. As the saying goes, if the master is humiliated, the servant will die. Of course, he understood the sixth young master's anger. After agreeing, he turned around and arrived in front of the two wooden doors. With a light shout, he sent Qi into his dantian. Then he suddenly pushed his palms forward. The seemingly sturdy door fell to the ground with a loud bang, raising a cloud of dust. Early in the morning, the sudden loud bang attracted the attention of the people on the street. Many pairs of eyes involuntarily looked in this direction. They were confused and did not understand what was going on. Could it be that a thief had appeared? But this was broad daylight. No bad person would have the guts to do this. The door was pushed open, and Yang Chendong walked in with a horsewhip in his hand. Behind him was Tiger's mane, who also had an aggressive look on his face. In the courtyard of the Wang residence, a man who looked like a scholar was standing there washing his face. Beside him, a woman with an extraordinary temperament but an extremely gloomy expression was standing there with a handkerchief in her hand. She seemed to be waiting to wipe the man's face. After a loud bang, the two people's attention was completely drawn to it. When the dust settled, a man in a green robe appeared in their sight. Sixth brother. When she saw the person, the woman holding the towel was first stunned. Then her face became filled with panic. She then lowered her head and turned to leave. "Wait." The man beside her reached out and grabbed her arm. "What did you just say? Do you know this person?" Pointing at Yang Chendong, who was striding over, Wang Go's face showed a vicious expression. Smashing someone's door was no different from slapping someone's face. The Wang residence's door being smashed early in the morning was equivalent to the Wang family's face being slapped. As such, how could Wang Go let it go? Seeing Yang Duo's expression, how could he not understand that this person had something to do with her? "He's mine." Yang Duo wanted to deny it, but when she thought about how Wang Go and his mother would bully her if she lied, she became nervous. She stuttered for a long time and couldn't make herself clear. Using this time, Yang Chendong had already walked in front of Wang Go. When he saw that this person was grabbing Sixth Sister's arm, his expression became even colder. "You're Wang Go?" Even though he had guessed something and was about to make a move, he still had to make sure of the person's identity. "This official is Wang Go. May I ask who you are?" Wang Go was not afraid of Yang Chendong because he was in his own courtyard. Seeing that the other party was not very old, he felt even more confident. He should be a wastrel or a helper that the Yang family had found. Regardless, he had the protection of an official. Unless the other party's background was very big, who would dare to make a move on his own? Raising his head, Wang Go wanted to use his power to intimidate. However, before he could finish speaking, a large palm was already in front of his face. In his eyes, it was infinitely enlarged. Then there was a crisp paw sound, and the clean sound of a slap rang out. Yang Chendong used a lot of strength in this slap. It was guaranteed that the redness and swelling would not subside within half a month. This was also because he was really angry and was really angry. After taking the slap, Wang Go only felt stars before his eyes. There was a golden light in front of him, and then there was an intense pain on his face. It seemed that something had fallen from his mouth. He instinctively reached out to catch it, and 3 teeth fell into his hand with blood. At that moment, he was so scared that he was about to cry. He muttered, "It's bleeding. My teeth fell out." As a person who only knew how to read books, A gentleman used his mouth and not his fists. When had he ever seen someone like Yang Chendong, who hit without saying anything? Not to mention that he was not prepared. Even if he was prepared, seeing blood would cause his mind to be in chaos. Seeing her husband being hit by her younger brother, Yang Duo first cried out and covered her mouth. Then her face turned pale. She went forward and said in panic, "Sixth brother, how can you hurt him? He is an official. Before anyone notices, you should leave quickly." As she spoke, Yang Duo used all her strength to push Yang Chendong's body, wanting him to leave quickly. Who is it? Who dares to cause trouble in the Wang family? A lion's roar suddenly resounded in the courtyard. Then, a fat woman ran out from the backyard. She looked like she could cause the earth to shake just by walking on the ground. Chapter 49. When the old woman came to the front of the courtyard and saw Wang Go's soulless appearance and the 3 bloody teeth in his hand, she immediately screamed like an ignited firecracker. Then she revealed a ruthless expression. "Thief, I'll fight it out with you." The old woman had some courage. As she spoke, she bumped her head over. It was clear that she wanted to perish together with the intruders. Scram. Tiger's mane had long been itching for a fight. However, without the 6th young master's order, he didn't dare to make a move. Now that the old woman had rushed over, how could he let the 6th young master do something like beating a woman? He stepped forward, lifted his leg and kicked. Under the powerful force, the old woman flew out with a plop. She flew a full 3 to 4 meters before landing on the ground. Tiger's mane didn't use too much strength in this kick. He also knew that today's matter was mainly to teach a lesson. He couldn't kill, otherwise, the trouble wouldn't be small. But even so, this kick made Wang Go's mother, Lady Yan, look extremely pained. After landing on the ground, she howled like a pig being slaughtered. I killed someone, I killed someone. Sitting on the ground, Lady Yan endured the great pain from her body. Her hands continuously slapped the ground, completely looking like a shrew. "You still dare to scream? Whip her again." Yang Chendong looked at Lady Yan with disgust. Just now, when Yang Duo accidentally grabbed his arm, he saw that 6 sisters' jade-like arm, which was originally as white as a lotus root, was now covered in bruises. If he guessed correctly, these should be marks left behind by forceful pinching. And most of them should be this old woman's doing. Even so, how could Yang Chendong spare her? He just whipped her again. If he could, he even wanted to directly kill her to vent his anger. Don't. Seeing that 6th brother wanted to hit her mother-in-law, Yang Duo's originally pale face became even more bloodless. She was really frightened. Tiger's mane only listened to the 6th young master, and had to carry out his orders. Without saying another word, he took 2 steps forward and lashed out with his horse whip, striking Lady Yan's face. A bloody gash ran from her forehead to her chin. It was very obvious. Then blood flowed out from the wound. The pain of this whip far exceeded the strength of the previous kick. Yenshi, who was in so much pain that her mouth twitched, didn't dare to cry out. However, when her hand touched the wound and touched the dark red blood, her expression changed greatly. She was about to faint in a flash. "You're not allowed to faint. Otherwise, I'll beat you awake." Yang Chendong only beat them up as a means. His real purpose was to teach them to treat his own sister better. Before that, no one should even think about fainting or playing dumb. As expected, Lady Yan, whose head was about to tilt when she heard Yang Chendong's words, was immediately energized. She forced herself not to fall to the ground. It was said that evil people needed to be dealt with by evil people. These words sometimes made sense. Yang Chendong's series of actions when he entered the courtyard really scared Wang Go and Lady Yan. Seeing the 2 of them calm down and looking at him with panicked eyes, Yang Chendong coldly snorted and said, "Listen well. This young master is Yang Chendong. I am the 6th young master of the Yang clan. Yang Duo is my sister. You actually dared to bully her. This is disrespect to our Yang clan. Today, I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of my deceased parents. If you dare to treat my sister like this in the future, then next time, it won't be as simple as teaching you a lesson. Of course, you can choose not to believe me. However, I want to say that the consequences of trying are not something you can bear. After all, you only have one life. After coldly throwing down these words, Yang Chendong's expression turned. He looked at the trembling young duo with a slightly more amiable expression. Seventh older sister, they won't dare to treat you like this in the future. Otherwise, younger brother will beat them up again. Also, if seventh older sister doesn't want to live with him anymore, just tell younger brother. I'll have him divorce you. Harmonious separation meant divorce. This meant that both parties were willing. This way, if the woman wanted to marry in the future, her reputation wouldn't be damaged. It was fundamentally different from being a divorced wife. Originally, Yang Chendong wanted to directly take seventh older sister and leave. However, Xiao Yin said last night that a person's path had to be chosen by themselves. No one could make decisions for others. If the sixth young master really wanted to forcefully bring seventh young lady back, it was very likely that he would force a person to death. Yang Chendong didn't doubt the credibility of these words at all. This was because he knew that it was very likely to be the truth. This meant that the choice was in Yang Duo's hands. Sixth younger brother. At this moment, Yang Duo's eyes were already filled with tears. For so many years, she had suffered so much, but no one in the Yang family cared about her. She knew that her family must have their own difficulties. After her parents passed away, the Yang family was already unable to protect themselves. Who could stand up for her? Who would stand up for her? But today, sixth younger brother came. Not only did he come, but he also helped her vent her anger. At this moment, she felt so satisfied and happy. At this point, even if she died immediately, it would be worth it. At the same time, she was also very worried that sixth younger brother would be involved in a lawsuit because of this matter. After all, Wang Go was also an official. Once reported, he would definitely be held responsible. Perhaps if she stayed and apologized properly, the Wang family would be less angry and sixth younger brother would be less guilty. Therefore, she couldn't leave. Not only could she not leave, but she also had to persuade Yang Chendong to leave quickly. With such a big commotion here, the people from the 5 cities warden's office should be here soon. At that time, if she was caught, she wouldn't be able to leave even if she wanted to. At this moment, Yang Duo made a decision and said with incomparable certainty, "Sixth elder brother, you should leave quickly. Seventh elder sister thanks you for helping me vent my anger and letting me know that I am still a Yang family member. But you really caused trouble by hitting people. Leave quickly, leave this place. With father's connections in the past, he might be able to give you a lighter sentence." Yang Duo's words were sincere. At this time, she was still thinking about Yang Chendong, which made him very touched. "It's okay, seventh elder sister, don't worry. If they want to sue, then let them. I will be fine. You have to believe in your sixth younger brother. Also, I will send people here to gather information. If something happens to seventh elder sister, I will let everyone in the Wang family die with her. At that time, your sixth younger brother will really be doomed. If you want this result, then go ahead and seek death. Otherwise, stay here and your days will get better." Yang Chendong was very worried that seventh elder sister would do something that she would regret after he left, so he could only use this reason to threaten her. He believed that if he said this, even if it was for him, seventh elder sister would choose to live first and see the situation first. Hearing her sixth younger brother say that if something happened to her, the Wang family would be buried with her, at this moment, she really believed it. She only felt that after not seeing him for a few years, her sixth younger brother had completely changed. He had changed so much that she couldn't recognize him. Naturally, she couldn't tell if he was lying to her. But what if it was true? She didn't dare to try. The consequences would be that after she died, she wouldn't be able to live peacefully, and wouldn't be able to see her parents in the underworld. Yang Duo hesitated. Yang Chendong saw this and felt confident. He knew that his seventh elder sister wouldn't do anything stupid. He immediately smiled and said, "Okay, seventh elder sister, sixth younger brother still has things to do. See you later." After speaking, Yang Chendong didn't look at Wang Go and Lady Yan, who were still stunned on the ground. He just turned around and walked out with Tiger's mane. He believed that the two of them must have heard his words. Before they took him down, they wouldn't have the courage to make a move on seventh elder sister because the consequences were not something they could bear. After beating them up and sending out the warning, Yang Chendong felt a burst of relief. After leaving the Wang residence, he saw the people of the Five Cities Warden's office in the distance. They were wearing mandarin duck jackets and rushing over. He first snorted and then said to Tiger's Mane, "Immediately return to the Yang family village and do as the young master instructed." "Young master, rest assured." "Young master, be careful." Tiger's Mane promised and got on his horse and left first. Yang Chendong was left standing by his horse, waiting for the people of the Five Cities Warden's office to come to his side and surround him. However, what was unknown to everyone was that the captain of the first group of guards, Xiu Vi, was watching from a distance with his 9 brothers. It was guaranteed that if anyone tried to harm the 6th young master, they would quickly take action and stabilize the situation. "The people in the courtyard were injured by you. What is your identity? What do you do? What is your name?" The leader of the group, Xiao Qi, glanced at the situation in the courtyard and asked Yang Chendong with a serious expression, "Stop talking nonsense. Tell this young master where the drum of hearing is." Yang Chendong ignored Xiao Qi's question and said in a rhetorical tone, "Drum of hearing? What do you want to do?" Xiao Qi was puzzled. The drum of hearing was a drum that was hung outside the imperial court during the feudal era in China. It was used for people who had grievances or urgent cases to beat the drum and report to the court. Zhu Yuanzong, the founder of the Ming Dynasty, also set up the drum of hearing and assigned people to manage it. Once there was a grievance, the emperor would personally handle it. If any officials tried to stop the grievances, they would be severely punished. Yang Chendong asking where the drum of hearing was clearly an important matter. How could a mere Xiaoqi dare to stop him? "What do I want to do? Do you think you have the right to ask? Let me tell you. Hurry up and lead the way. Otherwise, the consequences are not something you can bear." Yang Chendong's calm and confident expression frightened Xiaoqi. "Okay, I'll bring you there." Although Xiaoqi didn't understand the situation, he knew that if the person in front of him really wanted to beat the drum of hearing, he really couldn't stop him. Otherwise, not only him, but his entire family would be in trouble. After weighing the pros and cons, Xiaoqi thought that Yang Chendong was already in his grasp and couldn't escape. Since that was the case, there was no harm in following him to take a look. Thus he led the way. The soldiers of the Five Cities Warden's office stood on both sides of Yang Chendong, as if they were protecting him and preventing him from escaping. Chapter 50. On the streets, this scene became a common sight. Many people who didn't know what was going on were wondering what was going on when they saw someone being escorted by soldiers of the Five Cities Warden's office heading toward the imperial city. What was the identity of this young master? Yang Chendong didn't realize that he was committing a crime. As he walked through the streets of the capital, he looked left and right. This was the capital of the great Ming Dynasty. How fortunate was he to be able to enter the capital and observe it closely. The group didn't travel very slowly. In just an hour, they arrived at the drum outside the right gate of Chang'an. When a drum that was half the height of a person appeared in front of him, Yang Chendong dismounted from his horse and strode to the drum. Dong dong dong, he struck the drum 3 times in a row. The sound of the drum immediately spread far and wide, and could be heard clearly even in the nearby imperial city. The flag officer originally wanted to see if Yang Chendong really dared to strike the drum. Unexpectedly, the other party didn't even hesitate before striking the drum. At that moment, the flag officer retreated a few steps. He had finally met a ruthless person today. However, this was the first time he had encountered a situation where the perpetrator wanted to cry out for justice. In the main hall of the imperial palace, a court session was underway. The Minister of War, Kuang Yi, was reporting on the case of Deng Maoqi's rebellion in Fujian. "Reporting to your majesty, Deng Maoqi calls himself the Flattening King, and has already conquered more than 20 counties in Fujian. Most of the government's vaults have been plundered, and everything inside has been looted. Currently, he is planning to move towards Zhejiang. This subject is certain that your majesty will send out an order to suppress the bandits." As the Minister of War, he hadn't been in a good mood recently. He had originally thought that Deng Maoqi was just a country bumpkin who had brought some commoners to cause trouble. All he needed to do was to mobilize the soldiers from the nearby guard posts. However, he had never imagined that the county government would be attacked several times in a row, causing the defensive line to collapse. This caused Deng Maoqi's momentum to grow, and he seemed to be unstoppable. Of course, Kuang Yi didn't know that this was the doing of Lung Song's soldiers. He followed the ideology of robbing as many people as he could and used Deng Maoqi's name to take down several important counties. As a result, the defensive line that the soldiers had set up was broken, causing the flames of war to burn even more fiercely. They're just a bunch of foolish commoners. How could they cause such a huge incident? Zhu Qizhen, the lofty hero sex Zhu Qizhen, who was dressed in a golden dragon robe, was very puzzled. As he spoke, he looked at ceremony supervisor Wang Zhen, who was standing to the side. Wang Zhen's ability to read people's expressions was outstanding. After noticing Ing Zong's gaze, he asked, "Minister Xie, did the nearby guards fail to dispatch troops and thus delay the opportunity?" "No, they did their best. Unfortunately, the bandits were too powerful and could not be stopped." Kuang Yi did not show the slightest disrespect just because Wang Zhen was the one asking the question. In fact, in the imperial court, it was not uncommon for Wang Zhen to ask questions on behalf of the emperor. As time passed, everyone naturally got used to it. Kuang Yi and Wang Zhen had always minded their own business. Even if their relationship wasn't good, it wasn't bad either. This ceremony supervisor didn't have any intention of framing Wang Zhen. Furthermore, he knew that internal chaos and instability in the imperial court was a taboo for the country. As such, he didn't dare to do anything at this time. He turned around and looked at Ing Zong. "Emperor, the foolish commoners have been tempted and don't believe in the emperor's authority. In my opinion, we should send troops to suppress the bandits." "Good. Sin Sir also has the same idea. Send Censor Zhang Kai, Marquis Ningyang Chen Mao, Liang Kuei, Chen Yu, and the others to lead 20,000 soldiers from the capital and 27,000 soldiers from Jiangsu and Zhejiang. Use the Mongolian and Hui elites to suppress them." Ing Zong trusted Wang Zhen. Since he had said so, he didn't hesitate and sent out an imperial edict. The emperor is wise. Seeing that Ing Zong had decided to send troops, all the officials knelt on the ground and praised him. Logically speaking, since things had reached this stage, Ing Zong should have shown that he was a wise emperor and said, "Everyone is happy." In reality, he was about to say that, but suddenly 3 drum beats rang out. Even after entering the imperial court, they could still hear it clearly. This is the drum beating. Some of the more knowledgeable officials immediately recognized the origin of the sound. Everyone knew that there had to be something important to beat the drum to hear the drum. As such, they hadn't heard the sound of the drum for many years. However, today it suddenly rang out, causing everyone's expression to tremble. They all wondered if something big had happened. Could it be that there was a rebellion? The officials all had faces of worry and panic. Only Ing Zong's face was filled with joy. He had been the emperor for 13 years and had seen all kinds of things in the imperial court. However, this was the first time he had heard the sound of the drum. He couldn't help but be interested. "Teacher, quickly send someone to see who is beating the drum. Bring that person over for me to see." Since the emperor had spoken, Wang Zhen didn't dare to disobey. He gave a look to one of his eunuchs, and someone immediately rushed over. The pitiful group of old officials were still kneeling on the ground. Without an imperial decree, they didn't dare to stand up. In front of the drum beating, the 5 cities warden's office and the embroidered uniform guards had surrounded Yang Chendong, who was wearing a long blue robe. The only difference was that Yang Chendong, who was surrounded, had a relaxed expression. From time to time, he would reach out to touch the edge of the drum beating, as if he wanted to see what material it was made of. On the other hand, the soldiers surrounding him were all very nervous. Town supervisor Hu Changning was among the crowd. It was also a coincidence that he was on duty today. Originally, his attention was focused on the imperial court, because no one knew what might happen. Perhaps some blind official would anger the emperor and be dragged out. At that time, the embroidered uniform guards would have to do the work. Things like this had often happened in the past. Today, it was the complete opposite. Things didn't happen in the imperial palace, but in front of the drum beating. As soon as he heard the sound of the drum, he secretly knew that something bad had happened. He quickly rushed over with a few of his subordinates. Among them were the 2 subordinates that he had brought to Jianingfu last time. At this time, the 2 of them had already recognized Yang Qindong. Their faces were full of admiration. Although they didn't say anything, it was clear from their eyes that they admired the 6th young master's courage. Yang Qindong naturally recognized Hu Changning and the others. He immediately thought of a plan. Today's matter was destined to be of great merit. Since it was a favor at no cost, of course it would be best to give it to someone who was full of goodwill. Lord Hu, this official greets you. Yang Qindong stepped forward and cupped his hands in greeting in front of Hu Changning. Governor Yang Qindong greets you. Hu Changning couldn't figure out what Yang Qindong wanted to do. Could it be that he knew that he had caused trouble and wanted to worm his way into being friends? He had just heard from the flag officer of the 5 cities warden's office that this person was so daring that he went to Wang Go's house in broad daylight and beat him up. The imperial court had long made it clear that only the imperial power could punish an official. If anyone acted without permission, no matter what reason they had, they would be severely punished. This also meant that Yang Qindong was now a criminal official. What benefits would there be to be on good terms with such a person? If it were someone else, Hu Changning would definitely speak righteously and speak in a businesslike manner. After all, who would want to have any relationship with a criminal official? But Yang Qindong was not someone else. Others might not know his daughter's thoughts, but how could Hu Changning not know? If Hu Yan knew that the 6th young master had appeared in front of her father, but her father had ignored him and sent him to the imperial prison according to official business, who knew how long she would ignore him? If that was the case, then the gains would not make up for the losses. Of course, the most important thing was that Hu Changning did not think that Yang Qindong would do such a reckless thing. The 2 of them had interacted before, and the feeling that this person gave him was definitely not as impetuous as other young people. Now that Yang Qindong had taken the initiative to greet him, he also wanted to know what had happened. At the very least, if he could help, he would reach out to help, even if it was out of respect for the old Yang Rong. This was something that should be done. Governor Yang, do you know that you have committed a serious crime today? First, you beat up an official of the imperial court, and then you beat the drum. What exactly do you want to do? When the 2 of them walked together, Hu Changning lowered his voice and questioned with a displeased expression. Ah, Lord Hu, everything is wrongly accused. Yang Qindong's expression was one of crying injustice, as if he was the victim. What exactly is going on? Speak truthfully. Hu Changning was also deceived by this expression. Of course, this was because he still did not understand the 6th young master. Once he interacted with him more in the future, he would understand what kind of person this person was. In the future, when he worked with him, he would be more careful. Yes, I do not dare to deceive Lord Hu. The matter is like this. Yang Qindong's honest appearance was somewhat pitiful. This lowly official arrived at the capital yesterday and went directly to the Yang family manor 15 li south of the city. As soon as I entered the manor, I did not care about the fatigue of the carriage and immediately went to the manor. When I saw this auspicious event, I could not help but want to report it to His Majesty and the imperial court. However, because the city gates were already closed, I could not enter, so I had no choice but to stay in the manor and wait for daybreak. As such, I tossed and turned all night, unable to sleep. As soon as the sun rose, I rode into the city. As he spoke, Yang Qindong's body swayed, as if he really did not have a good rest. As he fell, he was leaning towards Hu Zhangning's side. The honest lord who reflexively reached out his hand to support him, and caught him in the act. Leaning on Hu Changning's shoulder, Yang Qindong acted as if he was feeling better and continued. After entering the city, this lowly official realized that as a mere 9th-level official, how could I have the opportunity to meet His Majesty? While thinking with furrowed brows, I unknowingly arrived outside Lilikang. Coincidentally, I saw 7th sister here. I originally wanted to go forward and ask where the drum of hearing was. This was probably the only way for this lowly official to meet His Majesty. Who would have thought that my seventh brother-in-law would not ask about right and wrong and indiscriminately try to remove me from my post? If it was any other time, this lowly official would have tolerated it. Who told him to be my seventh brother-in-law? However, when I remembered that I still had an important matter to report to the emperor, in a moment of desperation, I pushed Wang Go with the back of my hand. Unexpectedly, his body was actually so weak that he fell after being pushed by me. In his anger and shame, he wanted to fight me with his life. At that time his eyes were all red. This lowly official saw that he had clearly gone mad and slapped him, wanting to wake him up. However, who would have thought that Wang Go's mother would arrive at the same time and misunderstand this lowly official, and try to fight me with her? Her eyes were also red. In order to protect this lowly official's servant raised his hand and gave her a horsewhip, waking her up. Chapter 51. The story continued. According to Yang Chendong, his actions were completely passive, forced, and helpless. He was the biggest victim. Yang Chendong paid attention to Hu Zhongning's expression and found that he was listening seriously. He smiled and continued. After waking the woman up, this lowly official wanted to go up and apologize. Who would have thought that the soldiers of the 5 cities warden's office would arrive? Only then did this lowly official remember that there was something important to do. I immediately asked the soldiers where the drum was. Lord, who can go and ask? That is what happened. Yang Chendong's confidence in the last sentence was also because he had said so much. Only this sentence was true, and it could stand up to anyone's investigation. Hu Zhongning allowed Yang Chendong to lean on him and listen carefully. When there was no more movement, he made an inference about the entire matter and concluded that the words were not true. What kind of coincidence was it that he came to Seventh Sister's door? The capital was so big, how could there be such a coincidence? It must have been premeditated long ago. But the crux of the matter was not here, but the auspicious matter that Yang Chendong spoke of. What kind of matter could make the 6th young master of the Yang family so fearless and dare to openly beat up an official of the court? Hu Zhongning still remembered Beta Persei's skills very clearly. If Yang Chendong only wanted to take revenge on Wang Go for mistreating his 7th sister, he only needed to send this person in the middle of the night. That way no one would know. But he did not. Instead, he chose to do it openly, choosing to let everyone know. Could it be that Yang Chendong did not understand the laws of the Great Ming Dynasty? Hu Zhongning did not believe this. How could such a smart person not know something that even the common people knew? But he still did it. It could only be said that he was very confident in his heart. But what was this confidence? Hu Zhongning could not think of it, let alone guess. He tilted his head to look at Yang Chendong, wanting to ask him clearly. Lord Hu, you don't need to ask me. This lowly official wouldn't dare to boast about such an auspicious item. Now you only need to go to the palace and tell His Majesty the memorials that this official has just told you. When the time comes, you will naturally have a share of the credit. Yang Chendong chuckled. It was at this moment that he noticed a few eunuchs approaching from the corner of his eye. He hurriedly lowered his head and said, Lord Hu, please go quickly. If the eunuchs snatch the credit at night, it won't be good. Hu Zhongning naturally noticed the eunuch coming from afar, and understood the meaning of Yang Chendong's words. He nodded and said, All right, I will believe you this time. But remember, if you dare to lie to me, I will not let you off easily. Don't worry, Yang Chendong replied with a grin as he patted Hu Zhongning's shoulder. No matter what, Hu Zhongning was a man in his 40s. To be patted on the shoulder by a young man who was not even 20 years old, he couldn't help but feel angry. He wanted to vent his anger. Lord Hu, please go quickly. Otherwise, there won't be time for you to perform meritorious deeds. Yang Chendong had already expected this outcome and urged him repeatedly. As expected, once he said this, Hu Zhongning could only suppress the idea of settling the score with Yang Chendong. He turned around and quickly rushed into the palace. But on the way, he was still thinking that if Yang Chendong dared to trick him, he would not let him off easily. But on the other hand, there was no need for him to trick him. After all, he had gone to Jianing to pay respects to old Master Yang and old Madam Yang. Just based on this, there was no need for him to trick him. Before the beating of the drum, Hu Zhongning had just left when 3 eunuchs came over. The leader of the eunuchs held a horsetail whisk in his hand, his face pale. Before the eunuchs could steady themselves, a hoarse voice sounded. Who beat the drum? In reply to eunuch, it was this official, Governor Yang Qindong of Jianing Prefecture. Although he was unwilling, the 6th young master still bowed slightly, cupped his hands and bowed. Then he straightened his back. Why did you beat the drum? Is there a grievance? The eunuch instinctively thought that the person who beat the drum had been wronged, and it should be quite a big grievance. Otherwise, why would he dare to do such a big thing? No. Yang Qindong shook his head. Then what is it? The eunuch was somewhat displeased. He was unhappy that Yang Qindong was not tactful. In his opinion, since he was here, the other party should take the initiative to answer the question, instead of answering every time he asked a question. How could this eunuch know that Yang Qindong did not have a good impression of these eunuchs? Who knew how many loyal and wise officials had been ruined by these eunuchs? Just now he bowed because he was forced by the situation. It was already the biggest concession he could make. Now, how could he give the other party too much face? Of course it's a big matter. And such a big matter can only be told to the current emperor. Yang Qindong straightened his neck, looking like he would not speak until he saw the main person. How dare you? Seeing that Yang Qindong was so arrogant and still acting like this in front of the eunuch leader glared and said angrily. Yang Qindong was not frightened by the eunuch's words at all. Instead, he shook his head and said, I have already asked Sir Hu Chongning to report this matter to the emperor and the officials. If this eunuch feels that his status is high enough and stable enough to be higher than Eunuch Wang, then you can arrest this official and put me in prison. However, you must think clearly about the consequences. The eunuch was not afraid of Yang Qindong's threats at all. He was a eunuch and had a powerful group of eunuchs as his backing. He was not afraid of things. However, the mention of Eunuch Wang had truly frightened him. Eunuchs were not afraid of civil and military officials, because they all had to listen to the emperor. However, they were afraid of eunuchs. This was because the methods of these eunuchs could often get things done without imperial authority. This was what made them terrifying. Moreover, the surname Wang was a common surname. There were countless eunuch Wangs in the palace. If one of them was in power, wouldn't he be at a disadvantage? Thinking that it was better to be safe than sorry, the eunuch spoke with some caution. May I know who this Eunuch Wang you are talking about is? Of course it's Eunuch Wang of the Ceremony Directorate. Yang Qindong knew that the eunuch would ask this question, and had been waiting for it. When he spoke of this, he did not even pant. After all, Yang Qindong still had 20% of Wang Zhen's shares in the company. That was a lot of money. As long as he used his name, it should be fine. A person's reputation was like the shadow of a tree. When Wang Zhen's name was reported, the eunuch's expression changed as he suddenly thought of something. What did this official say you were called? This official is Yang Qindong, governor of Jianing Prefecture. Oh, so it's 6th young master. So it's official Yang. Sorry for the disrespect. In the blink of an eye, the eunuch's expression changed again and again. He went from being furious to smiling like a flower. This speed of change was enough for him to be an actor, and had the potential to become a superstar. It was obvious that the eunuch had already remembered Yang Qindong's identity after a short while. During this period of time in the palace, he had heard a lot about the 6th young master. The 3 mirrors in the palace were all his methods. It was just that because Jianing was too far away from the capital, no one thought about it for a while. Now that he knew Yang Qindong's identity, the eunuch's attitude immediately changed, and his face was full of smiles. Official Yang, may I know why you are beating the drum today? Since the eunuch's attitude had changed, Yang Qindong did not put on airs. He immediately moved his head closer and whispered, something good. Something good? The eunuch leader asked in surprise. Yes, something very good. I'll have to trouble you to lead the way. Yang Qindong returned to his smiling self. As he spoke, he handed over a bag of things. Out of habit, the eunuch leader reached out to take it and measured it with his hand. However, he felt that it was not heavy at all. His face could not help but tense up again. If it was not silver, then what was it? Before the eunuch leader could ask anything, Yang Chendong took the initiative to say, "This is called a diaper. It can be used to clean the crotch area and ensure that no foreign matter will come out at any time. Oh yes, this is a one-time use item. It won't be used for long. If you need it in the future, you can send someone to get it from me. But may I know your name?" Hearing that it was a cleansing item, the eunuch leader was first shocked, then delighted. It was not for any other reason. It was because eunuchs did not have that thing. It was often difficult for them to resist the urge to defecate, and a strange smell would come out. Usually, it was fine, but once they worked in front of the emperor would feel it and loathe them. Often they would lose their lives. Now that there was something that could help solve this problem, how could he not be delighted? Our ceremony supervisor is Mao Mu. His position is low, and he only occasionally works in front of the emperor. Oh yes, does official Yang's item really have a miraculous effect? Of course. Eunuch Mao, feel free to use it. If I deceive you, you can make things difficult for me afterwards, Yang Chendong said confidently. He had asked Zhou Hua's garment factory to make this item. It had been used on dozens of infants. It had no problem covering their bowels, let alone a lowly eunuch. After knowing that Mao Mu was the ceremony supervisor, Yang Chendong wanted to make friends with him. According to the ceremony supervisor system, besides Wang Zhen, there was also the admiral, head seal, penkeeper, and finally, the ceremony supervisor. However, the lower the rank, the easier it was to make friends with him. If they really became friends, it would be like having a spy in the palace. It would make many things more convenient in the future. The man was in love, and the woman was in love. Yang Chendong and Mao Mu both wanted to make friends with each other, so the two of them chatted enthusiastically. Yang Chendong even suggested to Mao Mu that he use the diapers first. If the effect was good, he could send someone to the Yang clan manor to get it. Afterwards, he could give it to eunuch Wang Zhen and a few other eunuchs. It would be a great service. Chapter 52. Mao Mu was delighted to hear this. Although he held a post in the ceremony directorate, there was still a gap of several levels between them. Wang Zhen was such a lofty figure that it was not up to him to offer filial piety. Even if he had the chance, he would not be able to offer anything good. But with Yang Chendong's support, things were completely different. With this good thing, currying favor and improving their relationship was just a matter of minutes. It only took a short while for them to go from being unhappy to now being as close as one. At this moment, Mao Mu was pulling Yang Chendong toward the imperial palace. In the imperial court, Hu Zhangning was kneeling on the ground, repeating Yang Chendong's words. Governor Yang said that he accidentally came to Lilikang and coincidentally saw seventh sister of his family here. He wanted to ask where the drum of hearing was, and use this method to meet his majesty. But who would have thought that his seventh brother-in-law would not ask about right and wrong, and indiscriminately beat him up? Governor Yang had no choice but to retaliate. Hu Zhangning was still speaking, but the faces of all the officials in the imperial court were filled with discomfort. What coincidence! What coincidence! That was only enough to fool a 3-year-old child. Which of the people standing here was not a shrewd person? Who did not know the secret behind this? Thinking about how Yang Chendong had only been in the capital for 2 days, on his first day in the capital, he had actually beaten up an official. Speaking of which, he was truly a strange person. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was young and frivolous. At this time, the officials had already stood up. They stood there holding back their laughter as they listened to Hu Zhangning's absurd story. Almost everyone knew that all of this was done intentionally by Yang Chendong. But there was only one person who listened with great interest, Zhu Qizhen of the Ying sect. He was only a young man who had just turned 20 years old. He was able to become the current emperor not because of his great ability, but because of his good fortune. He had a good father and a good family background. That was why he was able to inherit all of this, including the emperor's throne. How much experience did he have? Zhu Qizhen, who rarely left the palace, was not much different from a child. What he knew was only what the officials said. In the past, it was all about the world being peaceful, the people being in good health, and cheering loudly. Or, there were foolish people who rebelled under the influence of bad people, but as long as the imperial army arrived, it would be instantly quelled, and the people could once again live a happy life. Occasionally, some officials would be sentenced to prison for their crimes, but it was only written in writing. It didn't matter whether it was read or heard. It didn't arouse any interest. How could it be as interesting as Hu Zhangning said? Yang Chendong was a master storyteller. The story of him beating up seventh brother-in-law seemed to have become a wonderful story after being told by him. It was just that he was the good guy, and Wang Go was the bad guy. Ingzong, who was sitting on the dragon throne, couldn't help but nod his head. Even after Hu Zhangning closed his mouth, he still asked, "Beloved minister Hu, what's next?" Hu Zhangning's mouth was dry and his tongue was dry. He had just stopped talking when the emperor suddenly asked this question. "I asked you what's next? What happened to that Wang Go and his mother? Did they fight with Magistrate Yang again? Hurry up and tell me." Ingzong asked with great interest. When these words were said, the officials were silent. They only remembered now that their emperor was not very old, and was at the age where he liked to play. Hu Zhangning, who was kneeling on the ground, was first confused by this question. Then he heard a light cough. He couldn't be more familiar with it and knew that it was his father, Hu Kuang, reminding him. He immediately kowtowed to the ground and said, replying to the emperor, Magistrate Yang was concerned about this matter, and did not tangle with Wang Go's family. Instead, he used the arrival of the 5 cities warden's office to ask where the drums were. Then the sound of the drums was heard. That's it. Ingzong clearly didn't like this kind of ending. However, when he noticed that the other officials, including his teacher, Wang Zhen, all had stupefied expressions, he remembered that this was the imperial court and not his teacher telling him a story in private. He straightened his body and said, Magistrate Yang wanted to present a sign of good fortune. For this he did not care about the fatigue of traveling. His actions are praiseworthy. As for the matter of accidentally entering Wang Go's family, it is indeed a matter of fate. I don't think there is any need to look into it. The emperor is wise. Immediately, the crowd kneeled on the ground again and shouted, Long live the emperor! Who was Wang Go? Probably not many people in the imperial court knew. Although Yang Chendong was also young, his name was already well known. Last time, Wang Zhen had even said good things about him. Furthermore, he had been recommended by the Minister of Personnel, Wang Ji. How many people didn't know about him? Not to mention, the reason why Yang Chendong dared to sound the drums was probably because something good was going to happen. At this time, who would argue with the 6th young master? Most of them were interested in the so-called good fortune. If a small Hanlin Academy official was beaten, then so be it. Fortunately, it was an official beating an official and not a commoner beating an official. This was not considered a slap to the faces of the officials. Seeing the crowd praise the emperor, Ingzong's mood was also good. He continued, Beloved official who has done a meritorious service by investigating the situation and should be rewarded. When Magistrate Yang enters the main hall and speaks of the good fortune, he will be rewarded. Come, summon Yang Chendong into the main hall. The emperor is wise. Thank you, your majesty. Hu Changning kowtowed again. He was very happy. This Yang Chendong did not trick him. When he said that he had done a meritorious service, he had done a meritorious service. The emperor gave a decree that he wanted to see Yang Chendong in person, and see what the so-called good fortune was. The officials were all waiting with their eyes down and nose down, waiting for the appearance of the 6th young master of the Yang clan. They wanted to see what the good fortune was, and what the person who wrote those wonderful stories looked like. A eunuch went out to spread the news that Mao Mu was accompanying Yang Chendong outside the main hall. When he heard that the emperor wanted to see him, he immediately cupped his fist and said with a smile, Congratulations, official Yang. Haha, eunuch Mao is too polite. Congratulations, congratulations. After this matter, I also welcome eunuch Mao to visit the Yang clan manor. Yang Chendong also cupped his fist and returned the greeting. Of course, of course. In the future, there will be many places to disturb official Yang. Haha. There was silence in the imperial court. Several ministers and important officials were standing there with their eyes closed. Only a few young officials who could not remain calm would look out of the main hall from time to time. Just from this point, it could be seen that compared to calming one's chi, ginger was spicier. He's coming, he's coming. About half a cup of tea's time later, a young man wearing a long robe was led into the main hall by a young eunuch. He was tall and slender, and his face was as bright as the moon. His every movement was filled with confidence, and he did not seem to be nervous because he was entering the main hall of the imperial palace. Of course, it would be a lie to say that he was not nervous. No matter what, this was Yang Chendong's first time entering the imperial palace. However, he adjusted his breathing very well, so that his face maintained a calm appearance that others would think it was. After entering the hall, he strode forward. When he was 20 steps away from the throne, he stood still. Then he knelt on the ground and said, "Governor Yang Chendong of Jianing Prefecture pays his respects to the emperor. Long live the emperor." "Minister Yang, please rise." Ingzong's face was full of curiosity. He had read the legend of the Condor heroes, Xiao Li's flying dagger, and the smiling, proud wanderer. He was attracted by the wonderful content, and now that he finally saw the author, he could not help but be curious. Yang Chendong said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Then he stood up and looked at Zhu Qizhen, who was sitting on the dragon throne. He felt that Zhu Qizhen was young and a bit handsome. Of course, compared to being handsome, Yang Chendong felt that Zhu Qizhen's appearance was better. "You are Yang Chendong? Are you the one who struck the drum?" Ingzong asked with interest. All the ministers present, including Wang Zhen, were looking at Yang Chendong. In fact, among these people, except for Hu Zhangning, who was standing to the side, it was the first time they saw this young man, the founder of Yang Bao. Replying to Your Majesty, "It was me who struck the drum. There was really a great omen in the world, and I was impatient, so I struck the drum. I ask for Your Majesty's forgiveness." "No matter, I can understand your intentions. If there is really a great omen, I will acquit you. However, if you dare to deceive me, you will be punished for several crimes. Do you understand?" As Ingzong spoke, his face suddenly became serious and his expression became serious. It was said that accompanying the emperor was like accompanying a tiger. Although Zhu Qizhen was not old, he had been the emperor for 13 years. Once he became dignified, there was still a trace of power. He would be punished for several crimes, not just two. It could be seen that Ingzong had included the matter of Yang Chendong beating Wang Go and his mother. It could be seen that Zhu Qizhen was not muddle-headed. It was just that he did not want to think about some things. "I understand. Please allow me to report." Yang Chendong did not feel the slightest bit of fear because of the emperor's words, because what he was about to report was indeed an auspicious omen. Its influence could even be passed down through the ages, could shock the world, and would benefit millions of people. With so much influence in use, Yang Chendong was naturally full of confidence. "Good, beloved Minister Yang, please speak. This emperor and the other ministers are all listening." Ingzong nodded, looking like he was all ears. At this time, not only Zhu Qizhen, but all of the civil and military officials in the court pricked up their ears. They all wanted to hear if this matter that was caused by striking the drum was really a great omen, or if it was just an excuse to tease the officials. Feeling the atmosphere in the court was too tense, Yang Chendong's lips curled up. He did not go straight to the main topic, but cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, before I report this matter, I wonder if I can ask the officials a few questions." "Oh, is this related?" Ingzong was still waiting to hear about the auspicious omen. He was originally in high spirits, but when he heard Yang Chendong's request, his face became constipated. "It is related. It is greatly related," Yang Chendong replied. Chapter 53. All right, if that's the case, you may ask. My beloved ministers, no matter what Minister Yang asks, you only need to answer truthfully. Seeing Yang Chendong speak with such certainty, Ingzong suppressed his curiosity. He wanted to see what this person was planning. "Thank you, Your Majesty." With the emperor's permission, Yang Chendong first cupped his hands in thanks, then turned his gaze to the civil and military officials on both sides of the court. As his gaze swept over them, many of the officials couldn't help but lower their heads. They didn't understand what the sixth young master of the Yang clan wanted to do. What kind of questions would he ask? If it was related to secrets and privacy, should they answer? If they didn't answer, they would be deceiving the emperor. If they answered, they might fall into a trap. At this moment, many people were cursing Yang Chendong in their hearts for being meddlesome. Yang Chendong didn't want to think about the mentality of the crowd. The reason he did this was for the sake of his next plan. There was a saying that only when there was a comparison would it be deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. What he was looking for now was the art of comparison. May I ask which one of you is the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua? As soon as these words were spoken, there were a few more heavy sighs in the court. Clearly, when these people saw that Yang Chendong didn't call their names, they couldn't help but relax a lot, to the point that their breathing became heavier. As soon as the voice fell, a person walked out from the front of the court. He had a dignified appearance and had the air of a minister. He looked to be around 60 years old. This old official is Wang Zhua, but does Magistrate Yang have something to ask? Wang Zhua's courtesy name was Meng Fu. He was well versed in the classics and history, skilled in financial management, and held the position of Minister of Revenue. Lord Wang, this official greets you. I've called you Lord Wang today because I want to ask if our great Ming dynasty has sufficient food, and if the people have enough to eat and wear? Yang Chendong was very respectful towards capable people. When he faced Wang Zhua's bow, he also expressed his feelings and was incomparably sincere. Wang Zhua had been in the bureaucracy for dozens of years, so what kind of people had he not seen? He had already refined his fiery eyes. Just now, whether Yang Chendong's bow was sincere or just for show, he could naturally tell. Seeing that the other party was sincerely asking for advice, he replied, "Our great Ming dynasty still has plenty of food. As for the food and clothing of the common people, there are still some border areas that have not been completely solved." As expected of an old official, his reaction was quick. It was obvious that they did not have enough food, but they said it in such a euphemistic way, using the difference in area as an answer. In this way, even if Yang Chendong were to say that there were people who didn't have enough to eat, he would have something to refute and would not be completely powerless to fight back. Yang Chendong did not comment on Wang Zhua's mature words. This was originally not the main point, so he continued to ask, "I would like to ask official Wang again. Why is it that our great Ming emperor is wise and his subjects are dedicated, yet there are still people who do not have enough to eat in such a time of prosperity?" Governor Yang, watch your words and actions. Don't stray from the topic. The Minister of Rights, Hu Xiao, had not spoken, but at this time he suddenly reminded Yang Chendong that his words were a bit too extreme. This was not because Hu Xiao wanted to make things difficult for Yang Chendong. On the contrary, he was helping him. No matter what, because of him, Hu Changning had meritorious service. Based on this point, he had to express his gratitude. "Thank you for your reminder, official. This official will pay attention." Yang Chendong did not know who Hu Xiao was, nor did he know who he was. However, from the other party's words, he could feel a trace of goodwill, so he immediately cupped his hands and thanked him. Then when he looked at Wang Zhua, he changed the topic and asked, "Official Wang, how much farmland does our great Ming dynasty have, and how many people do we have? How much land can be produced per mu, and how many people can it support?" This question was directly related to the foundation of the country, so Wang Zhua naturally would not answer lightly. However, there were some questions that he could still answer. The ratio of land to population is slightly lacking. The average yield of land per mu is about 2 stones. If there is a good harvest, the people will naturally not have to worry about food. However, if there is a disaster year, there will be a bit of a shortage. Wang Zhua's answer was reasonable and pointed directly at the heavens. What he meant was that the people relied on the heavens for food. If the weather was good, the country would be prosperous and the people would be at peace. On the other hand, if there was a problem, it would not be with the people, but with the heavens. Yes, no one can grasp the temper of the heavens. No one can predict whether the weather will be good or bad. For a time, the officials below suddenly began to discuss. They seemed to be sighing about something, but in fact, they were using this to tell Yang Qindong that the temper of the heavens was not something that could be controlled by anyone. Therefore, it was reasonable that there was a shortage of food. While the people below were discussing, even Zhu Qizhen, who was sitting high on the dragon throne, nodded in agreement. This wasn't the first time he had heard such talk, and he also thought it was reasonable. Sometimes, because of natural disasters, there would even be imperial censors who would point out that he, the emperor, the son of heaven, had done something inappropriate and caused the disaster. Every time, he was quite angry, but he had no way to refute. Everyone seemed to have understood something, and they were either thinking about something or whispering about something. Suddenly, Yang Qindong, who was standing in the middle of the court, suddenly said, "Then may I ask Lord Wang, if there is a kind of grain that can exceed 2 stones per mu, will it change the problem of food shortage?" Wang Zhua, who was asked, instinctively asked, "But I wonder what Magistrate Yang is talking about. What is the number of stones per mu that can exceed 2 stones per mu? What if I say it is 15 stones? After a few questions, Yang Qindong finally threw out the trump card that he had been planning for a long time. Silence, extreme silence. The court, which was originally bustling with noise, suddenly became so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone held their breath at this moment, and some even widened their eyes and mouths. Their mouths looked like they could stuff a light bulb in. Swoosh. After extreme silence, there was rapid movement. Wang Zhua, who was already in his 60s, suddenly became much more agile. He rushed in front of Yang Qindong in a big stride, and suddenly reached out his hands to grab Yang Qindong's hands with lightning speed. His eyes were filled with excitement as he asked, "Magistrate Yang, is what you said just now true?" At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on Yang Qindong, waiting for his answer. If this person dared to say that it was a joke, it was likely that many people's spittle would immediately splatter on his face. It might even be exaggerated to say that it could drown him. Yang Qindong felt that his vigilance was already very high, but he was still firmly grabbed by Wang Zhua. From this, it could be seen that the power of potential was really limitless. Seeing that Yang Qindong did not answer, and was instead stuttering, Wang Zhua was afraid that he was joking. He urged anxiously, "What do you mean by this and that, Magistrate Yang? Hurry up and say it." Yang Qindong blushed. "That, Lord Wang, you're hurting my hand." It was Wang Zhua's turn to blush. He immediately loosened his grip, but his expression was still extremely nervous. "Hurry up and say it. Is what you said just now true?" "Yes. But when I said 15 pickles per mu, it was referring to..." Before Yang Qindong could finish his sentence, one of the courtiers at the side said quickly, "It seems like this is an exception. What a joke. How can there be such a high yield of grain in this world?" "That's not necessarily true. Even if it can occasionally reach the maximum yield of 15 pickles, it would usually be around 5 pickles. That's already very high." Some people spoke up for Yang Qindong. Yang Qindong, who was about to speak, suddenly stopped when he heard those words. Instead, he stood there and looked left and right, waiting for them to finish. "All of you shut up." Wang Zhua could not stand it anymore. As the Minister of Revenue of a country, money and grain were the things that he dealt with the most. And grain was the foundation of a country. Without grain, the soldiers would not be able to eat. How could they win a war? Without grain, the commoners would not be able to eat and could only rebel. Without grain, the country would not be a country and its foundation would not be stable. However, there was only so much land in a country, and the number of commoners was increasing year by year. In order to solve this problem, Wang Zhua had thought of countless ways, but he had never found a solution. He had originally thought that this would be the only way in his lifetime, and that this matter would be left to his descendants to solve. He had never thought that Yang Qindong would suddenly stand up and say that there was a grain yield of 15 pickles per mu. How could he not be overjoyed? This was a critical moment, and there were indeed other courtiers making sarcastic remarks. How could he not be angry? With Wang Zhua's rebuke, the restless courtiers instantly quieted down. It was clear that Wang Zhuo still had a certain amount of prestige among the courtiers. Speaking of which, if they offended this person, he could casually make things difficult for them. When it came to asking for money, he would give them a little later or find an excuse to give them less. No one would be able to stand it. The crowd fell silent again. When Wang Zhuo looked at Yang Chendong, his eyes were filled with eagerness. Governor Yang, they have all shut up. Please continue. All right. Yang Chendong nodded. Then, a smile suddenly appeared on his face as he said, "The 15 pickles per mu I mentioned refers to a year of great calamity. Even in a normal year, it can reach 20 pickles. If it is a good year, it is not strange to reach 25 pickles." Boom. At this moment, the court could no longer quiet down. Everyone looked at Yang Chendong as if they had not heard clearly. The sound of heavy breathing could be heard everywhere. "Do you need me to repeat it?" Yang Chendong seemed to be used to this sudden change in atmosphere, and asked Wang Zhuo with a smile. Yes, yes. Wang Zhuo nodded his head rapidly like a chick pecking at rice. "I said that 15 pickles per mu is the lowest yield. It can reach 20 pickles, or even 25 pickles is possible," Yang Chendong said with absolute certainty. Chapter 54. This time, everyone perked up their ears and listened carefully. After confirming that they did not hear wrongly, all the officials became excited. The Minister of Rights, Hu Xiao, reacted even faster. With a plop, he knelt on the ground and wept in the direction of Yingzong. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. With this item, our great Ming dynasty will no longer be plagued by hunger. Following this, the country will be prosperous and the people will be at peace. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Congratulations." In an instant, all the officials except for Yang Chendong knelt on the ground. There were even some who were crying and laughing, as if they had gone crazy. Yingzong, who was sitting on the dragon throne, finally understood what had happened. After being the emperor for so many years, he naturally knew the importance of food. Now that he heard that there was a solution, he was naturally overjoyed. When he looked at Yang Chendong, his face was filled with joy. He wasn't angry at all because Yang Chendong didn't kneel down. Instead, he asked in a friendly voice, "But I wonder where is the grain that my beloved Yang Chendong mentioned?" When the words were spoken, all the officials looked at each other. They were so happy that they had forgotten where this item was. If they said that it was on the sea, it would be difficult for them. After all, everyone knew that Yang Chendong had brought the 3 godly mirrors from the sea for the palace. There were even many officials who went to look at them. They could clearly see the reflection of their hair. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a godly item. Fortunately, Yang Chendong didn't continue to stimulate everyone's nerves. He answered confidently, "It's in the Yang Manor 15 miles south of the city. However, because most of them are still in the growing period and haven't fully matured, it's not suitable to harvest them now." Hearing that the item was 15 li away from the capital, how could Yingzong and the officials wait? "Even if we can't harvest it, we can at least take a look, right?" Naturally, this question was asked by Wang Zhuo. "Of course you can. Not only can you look at them, but you can also harvest a small amount of them. You can even make some for everyone to taste and experience the taste of this new food." Since he had decided to offer the potatoes, naturally, Yang Chendong didn't have the slightest intention of hiding it. Regardless of whether he would be disappointed in the Great Ming Dynasty, or whether he would replace the Great Ming Dynasty, there was one thing that was always right, and that was that this thing was something that would benefit the common people. With it, more people would be able to avoid the end of starvation. Hearing that not only would they be able to harvest some, but they would also be able to taste it, the crowd became excited. Even Yingzong became very happy. Alright, since that's the case, let's go to Yang Village to take a look. Let's see the true auspicious item of our great Ming dynasty. The emperor gave the order, and naturally, all the officials agreed in unison. After that, the embroidered uniform guards and the eunuchs got busy. The emperor was going out of the palace, and this wasn't a small matter. The problem of the route and the responsibility of safety had to be clearly prepared. When Wang Zhuo and the other important officials knew the location, How could they wait any longer? They kept urging them, and even ignored Wang Zhen's winking at the side, reminding the officials to be calm. Ingzong was 20 years old, and he was also someone who couldn't sit still. Seeing that this kind of preparation was going to take a long time, he immediately waved his hand and said, "There's no need to make such a big fuss. Zhen will be with the officials, so how can there be any danger? Let the embroidered uniform guards and the Eastern Palace guards each arrange 500 people to protect Zhen." Even though it was just a small matter, they still mobilized 1,000 people. This made Yang Chendong speechless. However, the officials once again knelt on the ground and praised the emperor for being wise. Yang Chendong could see that no matter what the emperor did, as long as it wasn't cutting off the heads of the officials, it was a wise thing to say. It was no wonder that most of the emperors were fooled. Under this kind of situation where they were praised every day, there were probably not many people who could withstand it. The officials were anxious, and Ingzong was also very anxious. He just changed into a set of golden dragon robes, which was more convenient for walking, and followed everyone out of the palace. In a moment, the streets were cleared, and the people of the warden's office of the 5 cities also followed to maintain the order of the city. The group of people left the Forbidden City, passed through Chengtian Gate, Daming Gate, and Jingyang Gate, and reached the outer city. From Yongding Gate, they rushed to the Yangjia village. The large group of people was mighty, and the common people on the side of the road were very curious. What happened? Why did the emperor leave the palace? Beside the dragon carriage were civil and military officials. Everyone was in a hurry, and their footsteps were hurried, as if they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to keep up with the group. Could it be that something happened? Did the Walla attack us? The common people were still suspicious, but the group was moving faster and faster, until they disappeared from the capital, leaving behind a trail of dust. Yangjia village. According to the 6th young master's orders, Tiger's Mane had already made preparations, and several large pots were set up beside the manor. The cook, Ichioa, was so excited that her face was as red as an apple. Just now, Tiger's Mane had told her that she would be cooking for others today. It was just that these diners were not ordinary people, but were very likely to be the officials of the great Ming Dynasty. It was even possible that the emperor would appear. Heavens! This was cooking for the emperor. Wouldn't that make her an imperial chef? At this moment, Ichioa was very excited. The old steward, Yang Hai, brought Yang Neng out of the manor. From time to time he would instruct his son. The 6th young master is a very capable person, the kind of great talent that only appears once every few hundred years. In the future, you must follow the 6th young master, and do your best. Yang Neng was a simple and honest person, and in fact he had a steady and honest personality. After listening to his father's instructions countless times, he still spoke as if it was the first time he had heard them. "Father, don't worry. Neng, will definitely do my best to serve the 6th young master." "No, it's the young master. Neng, didn't you see that Xiaoyin, Tiger's Mane, and even the cook, Ichioa, all call him the young master? Let me tell you, the Yang family will rely on the 6th young master in the future. Calling him the young master is not a bad thing, do you know? Even if others want to call him that, they don't have the qualifications." Yang Hai turned around and reprimanded his son. "But father, why do you still call him the 6th young master?" Yang Neng was confused. Father is someone who follows the old master, and I'm old. I can't and don't have the energy to serve other masters. I can't change the way I call him the 6th young master, but you're different. Do you understand?" Yang Hai shook his head. If he were 20 years younger, why would he give the opportunity to follow Yang Chendong to someone else? Fortunately, Yang Neng was the son he was most satisfied with, so the benefits didn't flow out. In the end, the meat rotted in his family's pot. Oh! This time, Yang Neng didn't dare to refute. It wasn't that he didn't understand, but he still nodded to show that he understood. Just as the two of them were talking, dozens of riders came from afar. The leader of the riders was the Imperial Guard's town supervisor, Hu Zhangning. At that time, when he heard Yang Chendong say that there was an auspicious omen that could produce up to 10 to 20 dan of grain per mu, he was also shocked. Then he understood that this time he benefited from it. In his happiness, he personally took the lead and wanted to come to Yang village to make arrangements. He didn't want to anger the emperor because the people in the village didn't know how to do things. That would be a big loss for a small gain. They're here. Yang Hai saw the imperial soldiers in flying suits rushing over from afar. He hurriedly said to his son, Yang Nung, open the village gate and inform the people in the village that the family is not allowed to go out. Yang Nung ran to inform the others, leaving Yang Hai, Tiger's Mane, and Beta Persei to meet Hu Zhongning and the others. Hu Zhongning didn't notice the others, but when he saw Beta Persei, his pupils contracted. Although it had been a long time, he still remembered how Rinpochian dealt with his two subordinates. It was as easy as an adult beating a child. Whoosh! Hu Zhongning took the lead and dismounted from the horse. I am the Imperial Guard's town supervisor, Hu Zhongning. Who will answer me? I am Yang Village's steward, Yang Hai. Greetings, Your Excellency. Yang Hai cupped his fist and greeted him. So it's Steward Yang. Hu Zhongning also cupped his fist and greeted him. Then he hurriedly said, the emperor and the civil and military officials will be here soon. You should quickly make some preparations. The old and young in the village. Before Hu Zhongning could finish, Yang Hai had already answered with a smile. Please rest assured, Lord Hu. The sixth young master has already made arrangements. Everything in the village has also been prepared. Please rest assured, Your Excellency. Hu Zhongning raised his right hand and patted his forehead with a wry smile. In his heart, he thought even more highly of Yang Qindong. This person had already planned everything. The beating up of Wang Go in the morning was probably also part of his plan. At such a young age, he already had such a strategy. Today he was going to make a great contribution. From the looks of it, his future was limitless. If his daughter really married such a man, it would be a wonderful thing. Next, Hu Zhongning brought the Imperial Guard team into the village to carefully inspect it. After all, the emperor had personally come. Nothing could be careless. When he saw that the manor was indeed in order, and there were even 10 farmers who were skilled in farming standing in front of the land that was used for harvesting in advance, he was completely at ease. Less than an hour later, a group of people arrived at the entrance of the Yang clan manor. The group of people surrounded the dragon carriage and passed through the entrance of the village, finally stopping in front of the village's land. A group of Eastern faction guards and Imperial guards completely surrounded this place to ensure that not even a bird could fly in. Ingzong Zhu Qizhen, accompanied by his teacher, Wang Zhen, walked out of the dragon carriage and came to the field of crops. To be honest, this should be the first time Ingzong came to a field of crops. There was a trace of curiosity on his face. He pointed at the dry soil on the ground and asked, where is Minister Yang? Is this the place where the grain that can yield 15 dam per mu that you mentioned is here? Chapter 55. Replying to Your Majesty, that is correct. Yang Qindong forced his way through the crowd. There was nothing he could do about it. Just a moment ago, a few important officials had pulled him aside and asked him all sorts of questions. They asked him what the name of this thing was and how to eat it. It caused him to answer one question after another, and they all gave the same answer to everyone. However, there were still many people who did not speak to him. He did not know if those people were still sulking in their hearts. Ingzong nodded, and then carefully looked at the ground beside his feet. The densely packed stems and leaves were already showing signs of withering. He asked curiously, Beloved official Yang, are you talking about this thing? Looking at the stems and leaves from afar, it looked like soybeans that were still in the planting stage. At this moment, not only Ingzong, but the other important officials were also puzzled. They did not understand. This thing did not look very densely packed, so how could it produce more than 15 dam per mu? Also, how was this thing eaten? Was it eaten like vegetable leaves? Yang Qindong knew that everyone was puzzled. He immediately walked forward in large strides. When he arrived in front of a thick stem and leaf, he pointed and said, This is the stem and leaf. It cannot be eaten. Of course, if you are hungry, you can eat it. However, the taste is not good. Its true secret lies at the bottom of the stem and leaf. Because it grows in the soil and is like a bean dozens of times bigger, It is called a potato. While explaining, Yang Chendong bent down and smiled at the crowd. With a slight force from his arm, the plant was lifted up along with its stem and leaves. At the roots that were pulled out of the soil, there were a few fist-sized earthy yellow fruits in front of everyone. Seeing the potato in Yang Chendong's hand under the sunlight, the officials all sucked in a breath of cold air. He saw that there were 4 fist-sized potatoes on the roots, each weighing more than 1 jin. This was amazing. One plant could produce 4 jin. 1 mu of land with 1,000 plants. Wouldn't that mean 4,000 jin? In that case, wouldn't 1 dan be equal to 188 jin? Wouldn't that mean that 1 mu of land could produce more than 20 dan? At this moment, all of their doubts disappeared. While everyone was still in shock, only Yang Chendong still had a look of dissatisfaction on his face as he said, "There are only 4 of them, there should be 5 or 6 of them. Also, it's not fully mature yet. In another half a month, it will grow a little." As he spoke, Yang Chendong bent down and plucked another potato under the watchful eyes of the crowd. This time, there were 6 fruits on it, and they were not much smaller than the previous one. Only then did Yang Chendong nod his head in satisfaction. Boom! Among the ministers, after seeing this scene, some of them with weak hearts and weak endurance had already fainted on the ground. 6 fruits per stalk, that's 6 caddies. Doesn't this mean that the yield per mu can reach more than 30 dan? The fainted minister was carried away by the embroidered uniform guards, and the imperial physicians who had followed them out came forward to treat him. Those ministers who had not fainted had indeed squeezed forward one by one, wanting to personally pull out a stalk to try. Seeing that everyone was moving forward together, it was inevitable that the bean sprouts would be trampled on. At this moment, the Minister of Personnel, Wang Zhuo, played his role as an old minister. Everyone stand back. If anyone dares to move forward, they will be executed. With this shout, everyone quieted down. Then, Wang Zhuo knelt down in front of Ingzong with a face full of tears. "Your Majesty, please punish this minister for overstepping his authority." It's fine. Beloved official Wang is just acting out of love. We understand. Ingzong laughed and reached out to help Wang Zhuo up. "Next, we will each pull out a potato and see who can pull out the most. How about it?" To be able to work together with the emperor was naturally something that all of the ministers wished for. Even if it was just harvesting crops together, it was also a kind of glory. For a moment, many envious gazes landed on Wang Zhuo. Wang Zhuo did not hear or see anything. Now that his gaze had landed on the potatoes, there was nothing else that could attract his attention. "This minister obeys." Wang Zhuo bowed and replied. Ingzong laughed and looked at Yang Chendong on the side. "Beloved official Yang, will it be fine for us and official Wang to do this?" It's fine. There are only 10 mu of land here, and it has been hastened. It was originally meant for the emperor and all of you to harvest everything. Just do as you please. In a while, when we leave, everyone can bring some back for their families to try." Yang Chendong laughed and had an indifferent expression. "Good. Then I will go with beloved official Wang first. In a while everyone will work in pairs. Remember, you must not trample on or waste this heaven-bestowed item." Ingzong spoke heavenly words and labeled the potatoes as a heaven-bestowed item. For a moment, all of the ministers cheered loudly. On the other hand, Yang Chendong had a bitter expression. It was clearly his contribution. How did it become a heaven-bestowed item? All right, even he was brought here by the heavens, including the entire warehouse. Then it was only right for the heavens to take some advantage. Moreover, Ingzong's luck was not bad. He actually pulled out 6 potatoes at once. Wang Zhuo was a bit worse. He only pulled out 5 fruits. However, this was enough for them to be excited. Reality had already proven that 20 dan per mu was the lowest yield. This way, the people of the world would not have to face the pain of starvation because of a lack of food. Once Ingzong and Wang Zhuo left, Hu Xiao and Minister of War Kuang Yi walked forward. They became the second batch to pull out the potatoes. Yang Chendong did not pay attention to the actions of the ministers. Even if it was a bit of trampling and wasting, it did not affect the overall situation. Now was the time to let everyone have a taste of the potatoes. walking in front of Ingzong and Wang Zue, Yang Chendong said with a smile. Emperor, official Wang. You don't mind if this official uses the potatoes you pulled out to cook, right? Haha, of course we don't mind. We also want to have a taste of these potatoes. Ingzong laughed loudly. Wang Zue's mood was also very good. All right, then I will bask in the emperor's light, and also have a taste of these delicious potatoes. Also, I asked Governor Yang to take this and cook it as well. Oh, I shouldn't call you Governor Yang anymore. For this great merit, the emperor will definitely reward you. It was unknown when Wang Zhen came over. He was also holding a potato with 6 fruits in his hand. Of course, no one knew whether he had pulled out the 6 pills himself or whether he had snatched them from someone else. Hearing Wang Zhen's sudden words, Yang Chendong naturally responded with a grateful smile. Perhaps only Wang Zhen would be able to take credit in front of the emperor and be so straightforward. Even if the other ministers wanted to ask for credit, they would have to avoid it. That's right. Ingzong, who was reminded, nodded heavily. This time, beloved official Yang has made a great contribution. He should be greatly rewarded. Although it was said to be a great reward, Ingzong wasn't mentally prepared for it. He also didn't know how to promote Yang Chendong. Thus, his gaze fell on Wang Zue and asked, Beloved official Wang, in your opinion, how should we reward beloved official Yang? This subject boldly suggests that he should be transferred to the Ministry of Revenue. Wang Zue had a good impression of Yang Chendong. For him to be able to contribute such a good thing, it was enough to prove that he wasn't a selfish person. Of course, he wanted to promote him. First, he would transfer him to his own ministry. After that, he could make adjustments at any time. When he heard that he was going to be transferred to an actual position, Yang Chendong immediately shook his head and said, Your Majesty, I don't dare to dare. This subject doesn't dare to be greedy. The appearance of the potato is because Your Majesty's benevolence in governing the country was moved by the heavens. Thus, this auspicious item was bestowed to Your Majesty. As for this subject, it was just a coincidence that I obtained this item. It really can't be considered a great merit. This subject is still young and still very playful. This is the first time I came to the capital, and haven't seen the prosperity of this place. I still want to open a restaurant, and enjoy the scenery of the world. Attributing the merit to the emperor was something that should be done. What was that saying? If you made a contribution, it was the good of the leader. If you did something wrong, then it was because you couldn't understand the intentions of the leader. It had nothing to do with the leader. Yang Chendong gave the merit to Zhu Qizhen. This was something that should be done. As long as he didn't lack benefits, it was fine. He took the opportunity to say that he was still young and wanted to play for a few more years. Presumably, no one would not understand. Ingzong, who was standing at the side, was originally prepared to agree to Wang Zue's request and send Yang Chendong to the Ministry of Revenue. But when he heard Yang Chendong's words, he suddenly felt elated. The appearance of the potato, this auspicious item, was actually because of his benevolence in governing the country. It seemed that he was a wise ruler. In an instant, his mood improved. He also knew that Yang Chendong was still young and wanted to play for another 2 years. Thus he smiled and agreed. Since that's the case, Yang Chendong listened to the decree. This subject Yang Chendong receives the decree. At this moment, Yang Chendong obediently knelt down. There was no other way. Under this kind of system, it was impossible for his knees not to go soft. Yang Chendong of the Yang family is bestowed the title of High Scholar. He will be promoted to horsewashing, also known as First Horse, assisting the Crown Prince, effective immediately. Without saying too much, Ingzong considered for a moment and gave Yang Chendong a reward. Bestowing the title of High Scholar meant that Yang Chendong did not need to take the elementary scholar examination. Horsewashing was a secondary class, rank 5 official. His specific duties were to be the Crown Prince's attendant. It was just that Zhu Qizhen did not have a Crown Prince yet. Although the imperial court did not set any rules, they had already reached an agreement. Only those who were rank 5 or above were allowed to do business. Ingzong made this decision in consideration of the fact that Yang Chendong would be opening a restaurant in the near future. He was paving the way for him. Being promoted from rank 9 to secondary class 5 was equivalent to being promoted by 7 ranks. In addition to the title of high scholar, although it was still lacking compared to the contribution of the potato, it was not too far off. The most important thing was that Yang Chendong was still too young. He was only 18 years old, and there were many opportunities for him to be promoted in the future. From the looks of it, the rewards were quite generous. What Yang Chendong wanted was to be a rank 5 official. Only then would he be able to do things properly. As for the actual position, he had not thought about it. He also did not have the energy and time to do things for the imperial court. Now that he had gotten what he wanted, he immediately knelt down and thanked the emperor. Chapter 56. However, at the same time, he also asked for an imperial edict. In order to cultivate potatoes, he needed to live in the Yang family manor, and could not attend court unless there was something important. Regarding this, Ingzong was in a good mood and naturally agreed. He was just a minor class 5 official, so there was no need for him to attend court. As for living outside the capital, since he liked it, he could do as he pleased. This was also Yang Chendong's plan for the future. After receiving the imperial edict, no one would be able to urge him to live in the capital. This way, he would have a lot of autonomy in terms of his safety. In other words, he would have more protection. Like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate, Yang Chendong had accomplished something that others couldn't do for many years in an instant. When he stood up, there were waves of congratulations around him. He also cupped his fists towards his colleagues to express his gratitude. Then he laughed and said, "Since everyone is here today, let's have a taste of the potatoes." This official has already arranged for the kitchen maids to make many types of potatoes. Good. Everyone was very happy to have such a high yield of potatoes. This was a great thing that benefited the country and the people. Moreover, it had nothing to do with anyone's benefit. Naturally, everyone was happy. However, there were also some shrewd officials who were thinking about how to befriend Yang Chendong, and then get more seeds to cultivate in their own manners. This way, they would not have to worry about using money to buy food in the future. The officials all had their own plans. Minister of Revenue Wang Zhuo had already seen through them, and proposed to the emperor that the seeds should be distributed reasonably. Otherwise, once these seeds were spread outside the country, the enemies would become stronger and threaten the safety of the great Ming Dynasty. This was an experienced schemer. At the end of the Ming Dynasty, the 8 great Jin merchants of Shaanxi had sent large amounts of military equipment and food to Liaodong to sell to the slaves Jian. This caused them to become stronger and stronger. In the end, the great Ming Dynasty had to spend a large amount of military resources every year, causing the national treasury to be empty. They had no choice but to eat from the common people, causing the peasant uprising to become more and more powerful. This caused the great Ming Dynasty to collapse internally, creating an opportunity for the slaves Jian to enter the Ming Dynasty. Now that the potato production was so high, if the seeds were to be spread out, once Walla and the others got their hands on them, they would have enough food to recruit more soldiers. As a result, the bigger they became, the more of a threat they would pose to the great Ming Dynasty. Although Ingzong was young and inexperienced, he knew the importance of potatoes. He looked at Wang Zhuo and asked, "Does Minister Wang have any ideas?" "Your Majesty, there is no way to completely put an end to it. Just now, I asked Sir Horsewashing Poplar, and he said that the planting of potatoes is very convenient. You only need to wait for the potatoes to mature and sprout before planting them. Next year, you will be able to obtain a large number of fruits. Unless all the potatoes were kept to themselves, they would inevitably be taken by others. And such a good thing should be planted all over the country. Only when it's widely used can more people benefit." Wang Zhuo shook his head. There was no such thing as guarding against thieves for 1,000 days in this world. Even if you wanted to guard against them, you had to be able to guard against them first. Initially, Zhang Xian thought that Wang Zhuo had a good idea since he had said so much. But after listening for a while, it seemed that there was no solution. Zhang Xian's expression couldn't help but become ugly as he asked, "Since that's the case, what does Minister Wang mean?" Wang Zhua hesitated for a moment. He knew that what he was going to say next might offend some people. But when he thought about the great Ming's eternal prosperity, it seemed that he could only offend them. Thus he said, "Your Majesty, this subject wishes to ask you to issue a decree. Before any diplomatic mission leaves the border, they must be checked to see if they are carrying potatoes. Once they are found, all the envoys will be detained and arrested as spies. But if they are found to be smuggling potatoes out of the border, they will be heavily punished, and 9 generations of their families will be punished." When he said 9 generations of their families will be punished, Wang Zhua's heart skipped a beat. He knew that this was a bit too ruthless and the punishment was too heavy. But when he considered the impact that potatoes could bring, he still felt that this kind of punishment wasn't excessive. A person who didn't even care about the country could no longer be called a person. Thus, any punishment wouldn't be excessive. When Wang Zhua said this, he was shocked. When Yingzong heard this, his eyes suddenly widened. However, it only took an instant for him to recover. The Great Ming was the Great Ming of the Zhou family. If this country was destroyed, perhaps the officials could continue to be officials after defecting, but he would no longer be able to become the emperor. Thus, if potatoes were to spread, the one who would suffer the greatest loss would be him. What was there that he couldn't be heartless about? "All right, we understand. After we return to the palace, write a decree and announce it to the world." Yingzong, Zhu Qizhen decisively made a decision. "Your Majesty is wise." After Wang Zhua finished reporting this matter, he immediately felt his body relax. At this moment, it was as if more than half of the strength in his body had been sucked out. The potatoes and pork ribs are ready. Following Yang Qindong's shout, the fragrance from the big pot immediately spread out for 3 li. It attracted the hundreds of officials who had just finished harvesting the potatoes to gather around like gluttonous worms. Wash the pork ribs and potatoes and prepare them. Put the pork ribs into the pot and add cooking wine. Then turn on the fire and cook them. Drain the cooked pork ribs and set them aside. Add oil and pepper into the pot and stir-fry the pork ribs. Then add soy sauce and other seasoning. Then, pour the pork ribs into the pot and stir-fry the potatoes. Finally, remove the MSG from the pot. The hot and sour onion shredded potatoes are ready. Cut the potatoes and soak them in water. Peel the onions and wash them and cut them into shreds. Wash the green and red peppers and cut them into shreds. Pour oil into the wok and stir-fry the chives, ginger, garlic and dried chilies. Pour in the shredded potatoes and stir-fry them for a while. Add in some water and stir-fry the onions. Add in soy sauce, sugar and a suitable amount of salt and stir-fry them. Pour in some balsamic vinegar and stir-fry them evenly. Then add in some sesame oil and stir-fry them. After the 2 potato dishes, 1 meat and 1 vegetable, were done, there were chopped pepper potato slices, fried potato strips, hot and sour shredded potatoes, eggplant stewed potatoes, braised potato chicken, rice potato cakes, spicy dry pot potato slices, honey juicy potatoes, scallion potato stir-fry, crispy fried potatoes, minced meat, and so on. Steaming the whole potato could also satisfy one's hunger. For many people who tasted potatoes for the first time, they felt that it was a kind of delicacy. A single potato could be used to make nearly 20 different dishes. While everyone ate heartily, they also praised it loudly. In addition, the cooking skills of the kitchen maid, Ichior, was not bad. Together with the MSG that Yang Qindong made, which was only available in Jianing and had not spread to the capital, everyone ate until their mouths were full of oil. Even Yingzong ate 2 bowls of rice and a steamed potato with the dishes. If it wasn't for Wang Zhen, who was serving beside him, reminding him, he might have eaten another bowl. After eating so much, Yingzong said with a joyful expression, "We are looking forward to when beloved official Yang's restaurant will be open for business." Replying, "Your Majesty, it will be open soon. It should be open within a month. When that time comes, Your Majesty can come and give us your opinion if you have time." Yang Qindong chuckled. He did not fight with the other officials to eat the potatoes. To him, this thing had been eaten for decades and had long lost its freshness. Thus, he had been playing the role of a waiter. When he saw an empty plate on the outdoor table, he would order someone to serve it. He was extremely busy. His reply to Ingzong was not perfunctory. Before they came, Yang Hai had already chosen a location for the restaurant. Even the new manager had been found. It was his cousin Yang Fu. When Yang Fu was in Jianing Prefecture, he had worked very happily with Yang Qindong and earned a lot of money. Seeing that the sixth young master was about to go to the capital, he was also tempted and wanted to discuss it with him. Yang Qindong was just thinking about who would be the most suitable person to manage the restaurant. When he saw Yang Fu jump out, he immediately agreed and hired Yang Fu to manage the restaurant with 10% of the shares. Yang Fu knew that the capital was not like Jianing. The human relations there were complicated, and it was not something that a merchant like him could understand. With the banner of sixth cousin, it would be much easier to do some things. Furthermore, 10% of the shares was not a small amount. He immediately accepted the agreement and brought Yang Qindong's blueprint to the capital. Only after coming to the capital and seeing those blueprints did Yang Fu realize just how extravagant his sixth cousin was. Just the initial investment had reached 50,000 taels, and just the renovation alone had cost him another 100,000 taels. Just what was he planning to build? Was he going to build a small palace? Of course, Yang Fu did not understand. Only when the required items were brought into the restaurant did he realize how ignorant he was before. Only now did he know how much his 10% share was worth. As the saying went, there was no harm if there was no comparison. At this moment, he realized that the Four Seas restaurant in Jianing Prefecture was as simple as a child playing house. Putting aside the restaurant, Ingzong heard Yang Qindong's invitation. Thinking about how the other party had made such a great contribution, he should satisfy this small request. He immediately nodded and said, "All right, if there is time, we will go and take a look." With just this sentence, the other officials naturally understood what was going on. In the future, if they wanted to find trouble with anyone, they shouldn't go looking for trouble with the Yang clan restaurant. If they didn't handle it well, they might end up offending the emperor. Yang Qindong was still busy. He even called for everyone to bring back some of the potatoes they had dug up, so that they could let their families have a taste. This was naturally met with cheers from the officials. Ingzong finished eating first and prepared to return. He called for Yang Qindong and said, "Beloved official Yang, I will leave a group of embroidered uniform guards and the Eastern Depot here to help you guard the potatoes that have not been harvested yet." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Yang Qindong naturally knew that since the potatoes had been exposed, it was no longer his problem alone. As such, he had already mentally prepared himself for this. Very good. Satisfied with Yang Qindong's attitude, Ingzong continued, "As for how many potato seeds to keep and how to distribute them, I will have Sir and the rest of you discuss them together." "Right, what is the name of your restaurant?" Replying, "Your Majesty, the Immortal Abode." Yang Qindong replied confidently, "You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.